I cannot stress enough how important the level design was to the success of the original Sonic games. I think you could have had everything else be the same. I think you could have had the brilliant character design, the stellar art, the stellar music, and the simplistic, mechanics and the simple controls. But if you didn't have the levels designed to take advantage of how great all of those things were, I don't think you would have had a very great game. I don't think it would have had the lasting impact on the gaming industry that it has. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I'm totally off script today. I just wanted to sit down with some maps of the original levels from Sonic 1 and 2. And I wanted to talk about what makes them so special and what makes them so great. I've already started a sort of tier list series of the different levels within the Sonic games and comparing them to each other. But when I was making that first video about Sonic 1 and I had to really dog on Labyrinth for not really living up to what it set out to do, I realized that I wasn't able to talk about just how brilliant some of the design was in spite of that, and how there's really cool things going on kind of outside the player's view in a lot of these levels that you don't really get to see unless you really zoom out and look at it as a whole. So let's dive into it. So of course we have to start with Green Hill Zone Act 1. And I mentioned in my tier list video how this level in particular, Green Hill Zone in particular, is just absolutely brilliant in how it's designed. And I think we can start to kind of break down exactly why that is instead of just claiming it to be so. So when we first start out, now, first of all, I want to mention that these first few maps were put together by a guy named Terra Esper Z. He only did, I think, Green Hill Zone, Marble Zone, and the start of Spring Yard Zone. And you'll see kind of we'll have to use some not as high quality maps for some of the later zones. But he put together these brilliant maps and I had to feature them. So first let's take a zoomed out look at the level. So this is Green Hill Act 1, as you're all familiar with, I'm sure. And what I think immediately stands out to me is how simple the level starts out and how complex it grows toward the middle and how it all kind of comes to a really cool climax at the end. I was trying to think of a, I don't know, less suggestive word maybe, but yeah, it really is. There's a kind of a rise in complexity and a rise in tension. And then it ends in this big spectacular moment that was, it featured in, the demo display. Whenever you're walking by the game at the store, it was featured in the credits because it's considered, the best moment of the game. And it's like the moment people think of when they think of Sonic is coming through the loop down into these tubes and getting launched up this ramp and into this field of rings. It's just brilliant. It doesn't really get better than that. That's Sonic to his core. And there's some things to criticize about it, it's the game's playing itself or whatever, but there's times when you're playing and there's times when the game is like, yeah, you get to enjoy just some ear and eye candy, So when we start out, Sonic's just got kind of a ways to run. The game kind of teaches you, okay, rings are good. You pick up some rings. Now there are some, I believe the enemies are missing from this map in particular. But there's a motobug here. Teaches you if you just run straight into it, you die. And if you learn to press the other 3 buttons on the controller, you'll jump. And if you get some rings before you run into the motobug, you won't die. Pretty similar setup actually to World 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers here, where you've got the Goomba. I mean, the motobug and the Goomba kind of work the same way. They kind of move the same way, and it teaches the player to jump to avoid enemies in almost exactly the same way. And then, funny enough, the first spring in the game is actually right here, and it's concealed by the tree. But what's interesting about it is that if you jump onto this platform and then you just kind of naturally jump off rather than falling off, you'll maybe hit the spring by accident. You may not even realize that it's there. And then that teaches you that there are things, there are secrets to be found. Immediately, within seconds of playing the game, you're already taught, what enemies are, how rings work, and that there are really cool secrets to find in the level design. And I think that's brilliant. We also quickly find out that Sonic slows down when he goes up slopes. If you come to a stop to pick up these rings or kill this enemy, kill the motobug that's here, you're going to have a little bit of a slower time going up the hill. And these first few kind of obstacles are here just to kind of introduce the player to the concept that Sonic moves slower going uphill and moves faster going downhill. And then, of course, that's shown off, that's paid off here, where you go down this little ramp and then you kind of shoot off here. And immediately it's getting the player to think about things in terms of the physics of Sonic, you know, the physics of, you know, a body in motion staying in motion, right? Then we make sure that the player knows how to jump here, because, in theory, I guess you could roll through the Motobug. But here we have a sanity check of like, yes, the other 3 buttons are important. So you got to jump to get up here. And to this point, there's only been one path through the level. There's been some things to do. There's been this box, this like ring box in this, maybe it's an invincibility box. I don't remember, in that tree there. But up until this point, we haven't had any sort of choice in where to go. Suddenly here, it opens up. So we're introduced to our first visible spring. This is the first spring that most players are going to see. And intuitively, if you jump on it, it's going to launch you up. If you land on this cliff, it's going to teach you that cliffs can collapse. Chances are you're going to fall down here. But if not, you have the opportunity to take this upper path. And then in the likelihood that you fall down, you're going to be taught about spikes. It's going to be pretty clear not to hit them and fall on them. You're also going to be taught that if you backtrack, you can actually return to a place earlier in the level, which sounds obvious, but when you fall down here and this bridge, this cliff collapses, you think to yourself, oh, I can't get back up there now because I can't jump back up there. And even this spring doesn't launch you high enough to get back up onto this cliff. But if you backtrack, you'll see that there's this spring here, which does actually bring you high enough to where you can backtrack in the level. And so that teaches you that, hey, if you mess something up, it's cool. You can try it again. So you either take the high route here or you take the low route. And if you take the low route, you'll notice that there are some spikes here. But then there's several rings in an invincibility box. Now I do wish they put maybe now I do think there's a Motobug here that you can maybe run through with the invincibility box, but I wish there was something more. I don't know. I guess I don't know how to. I don't know what I would have done necessarily, but I wish there was something here that would have made it more obvious. Maybe put these boxes on a bed of spikes or something. That way, whenever you break the invincibility box, it becomes obvious immediately what the invincibility does. That you're invincible. Now, games these days would have shipped with a manual, and so it would have been intuitive. You could read it if it wasn't intuitive. But I think it's great when games have intuitive level designs that whenever you play it at a friend's house or you don't bother to read the manual, you just pop it in, or your game doesn't come with the manual because you bought it off of a secondhand store or whatever, that you're still able to understand the game intuitively. I think that's just good game design. I do notice that the first checkpoint is actually here, and chances are you miss it actually because you're likely to fall down on a first playthrough. So I think that's interesting. But there is the second one here in case you missed the first, and you notice there's actually no hazards between these checkpoints. So there's really not a whole lot of reason for them both to be there, except that if you're taking the high route throughout the level, you're going to be kind of going through, and I'll kind of use my marker here. If you're kind of taking the high route through the level, you'll hit this checkpoint, but then as you continue to take the high route, I wish I could like middle click and drag to kind of keep going without having to stop. If you keep taking the high route here, you're gonna miss this checkpoint, and then you'll come here, and so you're gonna hit one or the other if you're taking the high route, and you're gonna hit one or the other if you're taking the low route. Now there is technically a way you could. Oh, I guess not. I was about to say you could get up here without hitting this checkpoint, but there's really not. So that's how they do it. And of course, we have this spectacular moment here. Now, I would like to point out that there's this big straightaway before the loop, whether you come from the lower route or the upper route. And that teaches you that if you just, keep going through the loop and you have enough speed that you can get through it. It would be weird if there was like a wall here, as we see in like Green Hill Zone Act 2, where you've got to like build up speed intentionally first. Instead, it just kind of intuitively teaches you that you can hold right and it'll get you through the loop as long as you're going fast enough. At some point, what I like about these two, these burrow holes through the mountain here, is that number one, it introduces a concept I like to call set piece design, I guess. It's this idea that like if you zoom out in the level, that this isn't just a bunch of platforms, right? It isn't just a bunch of Mario to this point. Mario 2 and Mario 3 had developed on the formula, but like Mario 1, the one that people were most familiar with, I would say, it was straight blocks across, and then there were blocks kind of just dotting the air that were they're just kind of randomly placed, Mario level design has always just been kind of isolated obstacle courses. But what Sonic really does, and what he really does well in the first game in particular, I would say, and maybe the third game and CD to a certain extent, and the second game kind of struggles in this to a lesser extent, I would say, is that there are these big set pieces that you remember as part of the design of the level that really helps you to remember, okay, we start out, there's a straightaway, we cross a bridge, then we like traverse some hills, and then we burrow through a mountain. And like, if you zoom out even further, this mountain is a huge part of the level. And it takes up the entire vertical span of the level. In fact, to this point, it takes up more than the entire vertical span of the level. The level has to expand downward to accommodate the sheer size of this mountain. Now, of course, that introduced some technical difficulties, I would say, in that if you've ever played the original Sonic on a cartridge, you'll know that a bug existed in the original game where if you hit this going too fast, if you like picked up speed going through the loop and then you hit this ramp going too fast, you'd actually go so fast through this loop that the screen wouldn't be able to scroll down fast enough. You'd hit the bottom of the screen and die as if you fell into a pit. If any first-time players ran into that or encountered that, it really sucked. So I'm glad they fixed that in later re-releases. But what I think is so brilliant about the set piece as well is it teaches you really about how picking up speed works in this game. So the burrow, the little burrow holes, they force you into kind of the rolling state that Sonic gets. And then when Sonic rolls out of the second hole, when he hits this ramp at really high speed, you see, he launches. He launches way higher than you could ever jump. And then you're just sent spiraling into this field of rings. And it just, oh my God, it sends so many fucking dopamine signals off in your head at once. And that's everything you need to know about Sonic right there. You go fast, you get through obstacles. And if you want to go faster, you pick up speed going downhill while rolling into a ball. And that, it's brilliant. Truly brilliant. I can't gush about it enough. So then we kind of have, again, a split in kind of the upper and lower routes, and then we come to the end of the level. And that's the first level of Sonic, and it's gorgeous. Now, I won't go as deep into every single level like that. I do think that Green Hill Zone Act 1 in particular deserved that much attention. But I will say that actually this video is going to be, there's going to be two versions of this video. What you're watching right now is the YouTube edit. This is going to be with kind of my nerdier rants probably cut out. But there's going to be an extended version of this video that you can watch on my website, neontherocks.com, as long as you're a member of the Neat Club. I'm really trying to make it so that content creation for me is sustainable as a career. And the best way that you can help make that happen is by becoming a member of the Neat Club. So visit neontherocks.com today and check it out. I'd really appreciate it. And you'd help me, eat and stuff. So with all that being said, we'll get into Green Hill Zone Act 2. So Act 2 acts as part 2, if you'd believe it. First of all, if we zoom out, you'll notice that we have a lot more branching pathways this time. So something interesting is that both of these levels are about the same length. But Act 2 feels a lot shorter sometimes, depending on how you take it. But there's a lot more that you can explore with Act 2. I think Act 2 is where you kind of learn that you're allowed to explore and you're allowed to speedrun, and that both approaches to the game are equally as enjoyable and equally valid, I guess. So we start off, and in contrast to Act 1, so something intentional about Act 1 is that they start you off in such a way where Sonic is at the bottom of the screen, and you get to take in just the entire screen is filled with just the lush look of Green Hill Zone. So if we scroll in, it kind of looks like this. We get to see the entire background at once. We get to see the clouds, the water, and Sonic sitting in front of it. Act 2, we open, we're on top of a hill. And so immediately we get the choice pretty early on in the level where we can choose to go to the right, or we can go left. And a lot of first-time players don't even realize you can go left. But if you're clever and you notice that there's a space right here where you can stand, some clever players will think, well, what if I jump over this? And that also helps teach you that your jump height actually varies with how much you press the button, how strongly you press the button. Because if you hold jump as you jump to the left here, you'll actually land on this platform. But if you just tap jump, you'll be able to jump over the spikes and land down here in this secret area. And it's not the only way to find this secret area, but it's one of them. And I think that it's really cool that you can approach this secret from multiple directions. So as we go further into the level, assuming you don't take that secret route, you come down here and we're given another opportunity to kind of choose where we want to go. So if you're careful, you can navigate, you can take this swinging platform across this gap and move on with the level. Or you may notice that there are rings down this ramp and you may choose to jump down it. And if you jump down it and then you hold down as you go down it, you'll spin and you'll be launched this way, even up this hill, across and into this part of the level. And it teaches you that you can also go left. You may even, if you fall down here, you can take this little hill to go up and swing and get back onto the swinging platform. But if you're finding that to be frustrating or you're not able to figure that out, you can run left and you'll find more stuff over here. You'll find rings, you'll find enemies and obstacles that you'll realize it's like, oh, this wasn't immediately obvious that this was here, or that I missed this, or that this was another route that would have taken me here. So this must have been, I can also go left sometimes. And with that, you'll hit a speed shoe box, which will then teach you how the speed shoes work. And then you can then backtrack and use the speed shoes to get over this ramp much easier. That's a brilliant way of teaching you what the speed shoes do in a way that I don't think the invincibility box really was able to do in Act 1, at least. But we're gonna see that again here in a second. And then we're also gonna see that there's this, even though we have the speed shoes, we're gonna find this tight platforming section down below. And it isn't super obvious what it's for. If you got the speed shoes, you're like, man, I want to just kind of plow through this part, but I kind of have to go slow. Why is that? And it's because it leads to another secret, right? So it's very precarious. The spike bug was in effect in Sonic 1. If you fell on spikes, you immediately died. This may as well be a bottomless pit down here. But if you're able to, get past and jump on these platforms and kind of get from each one to the next, we continue on here. And first we're taught that sometimes springs will be in your way. This may also be a time where maybe you can learn that the red springs are. So I think what they probably did for Green Hill Zone is, I think all the springs in Act 1 were yellow. And now I think a lot of these springs in Act 2, I'm noticing that send you backwards are red. And so while I don't think, red springs are just, they send you faster and farther than yellow springs. And so I don't know that they necessarily wanted you to think, oh, red means bad here, but it also, oh shit, I didn't mean to delete that. It also could, you could make the argument that it's there to kind of teach you that sometimes springs are going to hamper your progress just as much as they can help you. So something interesting about that. But if you come here and you hit this spring, you may just notice, you kind of have to be quick about it. And it helps if it's not your first rodeo. It helps if you're not, it's not your first time through the level. But if you hit the spring, you can then get the extra life and the extra rings on top of this loop. And that's brilliant because you're likely not going to come here on the first playthrough. You're likely going to take the upper route, or get the speed shoes and take the upper route in some capacity. And then when you come to this part, you're going to go through this loop not knowing how you get on top of it. And in fact, I don't think without the spin dash, there's no way to get on top of it without that spring down there. So Now the spin dash does make it to where you can, I think, jump off of this ramp. If you spin dash up this ramp with enough speed, if you spin dash off this ramp with enough speed, you can end up over here, I think. But the spring is there. The life that there in the original design was there to clue you in that there's something you're missing, that there's a secret to get up there. Now, what's cool about this section is you go through the loop and you come here and you're likely going to hit the bottom of this monitor. In fact, pretty much every time I've ever played this level, anytime I've ever seen anybody play this level, they hit this monitor with their with Sonic. And then the monitor falls out of the tree. But then you've got this rock here. They place this rock to make sure you don't just hold right through this section and just barrel off this ramp and into the spike pit down below. It gives you the opportunity to stop and say, okay, I want to hit this monitor and now I'm invincible. And now I can navigate this section of the level more easily. Now these, again, may as well be bottomless pits if you don't have the invincibility, because if you fall onto the spikes, you're falling into the pit, or onto the spikes again at best, which in Sonic 1 would kill you. But this section is there to kind of be like, okay, sometimes you got to slow down, and sometimes there's going to be some hazardous parts of the level. And I think this is also where, as a kid, this is where I first game overed. This is where I would die quite a bit. And the extra life is there. I believe the extra life respawns if you die. And so if you want to redo that section and get the extra life each time before you attempt this part, you can. But then after navigating this part and dealing with some buzz bombers that have definitely knocked me off of these platforms a few times, you come to your checkpoint. And this is probably the first time you'll die after a checkpoint, so that kind of will teach you what checkpoints do. And then we get to the part where the level expands again. So you'll see, we see this pattern in Sonic 1's level design where we have this expansion and then this contraction in the level design, where you have kind of multiple routes you can take through the level. You can go down, you can go around. You can go this way, you can go that way, you can go down here, you can go down here. There's 3 different ways you can tackle this level practically. But then we have this convergence, right? Then we have this part where it's like, okay, the level will always bring you to this part. You can't proceed in the level without beating this particular, without overcoming this particular obstacle, I guess. And then we have expansion again. So after you clear that set piece, you then get to kind of enter the playground again and have some fun. And so here we enter another really vertical section of level, where there's about 3 different ways of tackling this. You could just hold right. Again, this level is set up to kind of encourage you to speedrun. This is the shortest act of Green Hill. If you just hold right through this section, you'll come over here, you'll jump, you'll cross this bridge. You might have to deal with this swinging platform here. Might have to deal with the swinging platform, but then you cross this bridge, go down through the loop. You do have to do the jumping part. Then after that, you just kind of make a couple jumps, go down through a loop, and you're at the end of the level. But at the same time, there's all of this here, this huge little playground section. This last kind of third of the level is here for you to say, hey, explore. Find some stuff. Find some stuff you can do. You can come down here. You can go up here, have several extra rings to grab. You can come down here. If you fall down where the cliffs collapse, you can go down, get a shield. The shield doesn't really help you this late in the level because these spikes are the spike bug is in effect. So, but in later versions of the later iterations of the game, Jesus Christ, that kind of applies. But you can come down here. Now there is some hazards. You can potentially hit a spring. Now, if you didn't learn earlier that springs can send you to, backwards, you're gonna learn it here. And then there's this last little ring box just as a reward for taking the lower route if you want to, and as an extra attempt to get just a few extra rings before hitting the end of the level and potentially going to the special stage. So that's Green Hill Zone Act 2. I might like Green Hill Zone Act 2 even better than Act 1. I think it might even be better designed. You can't have Act 2 without Act 1, but you also they complement each other so wonderfully. It's truly beautiful. And then we have Act 3 to expand upon it further. So I find it interesting that Sonic 1 has 3 acts per zone. It's really kind of very different compared to later games. Can we pick this up, please? Now, what I don't like about any of these whiteboard applications is that they don't scale the images to the same scale. So this is actually, I wish I could compare the size of the levels to you for you. But so anyway, so we get to Act 3, and then this is the kind of culmination of everything you learned. So Act 1 and Act 2 had different things to teach you, and then Act 3 kind of is like, okay, put those things together. Whereas later Sonic games really only want to do kind of an Act 1 to introduce the concepts and then an Act 2 to apply them or to like add a new spin to them. So I think Sonic 1's approach is very interesting. So we start Act 3, and again, we kind of start kind of at the bottom of the level, what starts as the bottom of the level, and then the level expands slowly. But it's immediately significantly more dangerous. So we see spikes and buzz bombers before we see any rings. There is actually an invincibility monitor hidden in this tree, but we see spikes and buzz bombers before we see any rings. And so this is yet another place where if you're really inexperienced, if you're new to video games, like I was when I was a kid and I played this for the first time, you probably run into this stage and you game over a few times and have to restart. But you're able to hit the spring, and then you're really kind of, this is really kind of you starting to apply, okay, when I hit a spring, I don't just go up. I hit a spring and I carry the momentum when I hit it. And I could actually, when I hit a spring, I don't just go up. I can actually hit it from an angle and then kind of do this action where I'm able to get some distance from it. And then I can apply the same thing here and get up to this shield. And you're immediately being rewarded for learning that and applying that. Now, this is where I would say the Sonic trope of upper root and lower root kind of comes into play. So we find in a lot of early Sonic levels and classic Sonic levels in particular that there's almost always an upper root and a lower root through a level. And what the idea is that the upper route has maybe some extra rewards or is faster or is more fun in some way, or has something encouraging you to take the upper route. And then if you fail or if you fall, then you have the lower route, which is maybe a little bit slower, maybe a little bit safer, more methodical. And so here we have that applied. If you take the upper route here and you're able to navigate, these floating platforms, the gap between these hills and these cliffs is bigger than the gaps between the cliffs in Act 1 and Act 2. If we go back to Act 2 for a second, you'll see that there was, these cliffs are right next to each other. You basically can just run across them continuously, right? Those are the only collapsing cliffs in Act 2, and in Act 1, the cliffs really didn't punish you all that much for falling in them. And again, they're actually quite close together. Act 3, we have the biggest leap in terms of distance between these cliffs and the next platform so far. So already the game is very subtly challenging the player more to gain a little bit more speed, to be more confident in their jumps, to jump farther. But if we fall down, it's not the end of the world. There's a spring we can take back up, or we can again apply the breakable walls here and roll through them. Now there isn't any speed. I didn't know I could do that. That's interesting. Now there isn't any speed to be built up here. You can't really, even if you start at the top of this, start at the top of this hill and roll all the way down, you're really not carrying that speed into the wall. So this really teaches you that you can, move back and forth, and then use that to build up enough speed to roll. And that might not get you all the way through the wall, but then you just back up and do the same thing. And that can kind of teach you, if you didn't learn it from Act 2 with the loop, that if you just need to, sometimes you just need to back up a little bit so that you can get a running start. And I think that's pretty cool. Now we have the level again, splits into 3 here. We've got kind of upper route, middle route, and lower route. So we kind of see, this isn't as linear as that section in Act 2 where it all converged, but we see kind of really just kind of 1.5 routes here turn into 3 almost instantly. And if we take the lower route, again, this is actually kind of a secret route because it's not, immediately obvious that you can roll through this wall, and that's the only way to get down below this bridge. But if you come down here and you're able to navigate this kind of more dangerous section with all these spikes, you might be taken to the checkpoint, but if you're clever, you can jump over the spikes, and down beneath this waterfall is 5 extra ring boxes and a 1-up, which I think is a pretty cool little secret that I even often forget about, that I even often forget is there. So that's pretty dope. I also like the amount of speed you get coming down this tube, and then again hitting a spring and learning that springs can set you back. So we have the upper route and the middle route left. The middle route is another place where you can gain some speed, and is once again a place where the game is like, okay, yeah, here's some speed, but also we'll encourage you to explore this area. So what I think is cool is that even if you don't get up, if you don't take the upper route, and you don't get up to this section, you can actually use this spring to bank off of this hill and land on top of the loop and hit the 1-up, which is really, really cool level design. But you could also take the upper route, be more methodical and take, the falling platforms and the moving platforms. There's an extra checkpoint up here in case you want to try again. Or in case you die, you can actually fall down and hit the 1-up again. Then we have another set piece, which is the spiraling bridge. We're in Act 3 and we're still using new level design. We're still seeing new gimmicks in the level, which is cool. So we got the twisting log bridge, which is cool. We got the platform moving back and forth above it. And then we come to what seems to be, we got another log bridge, some more invincibility boxes. We can't spend this much time on every single level in both games. So, here we start to see the convergence again. So here's where you might think to roll through the wall. Here's where it may first become apparent. That's what you're supposed to do. And then what's great is that this comes after the point earlier in the level where you could have done it. And so that's yet another thing that encourages replayability. You also, the other thing too is we're shown that you can go, you can go beneath the waterfall underneath this log bridge. So that might clue you in that there's something underneath the waterfall underneath this log bridge, which is pretty cool. Just clever little hints like that tell the player that there might be more there than meets the eye. Really dope stuff. Again, probably this section I can remember clearly as a section that I lost too many lives on in my first playthroughs as a kid. It's the last kind of little, it seems so simple. It's just a cliff and, a moving platform and a bed of spikes. But this is really kind of the part that's like, okay, you're going to be doing little platforming challenges like this and overcoming these dangers on a regular basis. It's not just exploring this lush tropical paradise. And what's brilliant about it is that there's still multiple ways of approaching the problem. I like that it gives the players the agency of deciding, okay, do I want to get a running start from the top of this hill and try to go for it? Do I want to run and then jump off of the cliff as it breaks? Do I want to be a little bit slower and more methodical and take the swinging platform? It's up to you. And I think that's pretty dope. One last time, we get an invincibility box and we get to carry that into our first boss. What's interesting is that for every boss in Sonic 1, there's no rings after the checkpoint, which is strange, but might teach you to like, okay, well, you got to backtrack if you want to get rings to face the boss again. But just an odd choice that I was glad didn't really carry over to the sequels. But they ran with that design in the Game Gear games. and made it so that pretty much every boss in the Game Gear games you never had rings for, which I don't really understand what the thought process behind that design was. But and then of course we have the first boss of the game, and what is there to say about it? It's brilliant. I'm gonna do probably a separate video about boss design at some point, but that's Green Hill Zone, right? So with that, we're gonna speed up a little bit. We're not gonna go through every single level in Sonic 1 and 2 as in detail as we did all of Green Hill Zone, but I really wanted to stress just how brilliant this level design was, and just how much thought went into every single chunk of the level, and every single set piece, and every single bit of convergence and divulgence and all of the different vocabulary words you can think of that makes this level design so freaking awesome. And then we go to Marble Zone, and the vibe shifts, to say the least, right? People do not like Marble Zone that much. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, but I think Marble Zone's kind of cool. Really, somebody said it in the comments of my last video. They were like, a lot of what Sonic 1's gold design was variety. And I think that's true. I think that they really wanted to showcase the flexibility of Sonic's mechanics. Whereas later games kind of learned that, well, maybe we don't really need to focus on the flexibility. Maybe we can focus on what makes it great, focus on all the best things. So we go through Marble Zone. Immediately it's more hazardous. The lava, it still looks familiar. The grass texture, if you want to call it that. The art of the grass is the same as that used in Green Hill. So it kind of builds some continuity. But immediately the lava gives you a sense of danger, and the music as well. I also love that we went for like a castle design, but we also got some like Roman architecture in there. Anyway, I'm just repeating myself at this point from stuff I said in previous level, but already we're going to show off, hey, there's got to be little secret passageways you can go to. Now I do think that Marble Zone suffers from being pretty weak in terms of player agency. Green Hill Zone showed off that there's multiple ways to approach every problem. And then Marble Zone kind of slaps you in the face and says, actually, there's really only one way to solve every problem, solve all these problems. If I were to change Marble Zone Act 1 to make it a little bit better in that regard, what I probably would have done is I probably would have incorporated a shortcut here where maybe this is a false wall above these spikes. That way, if you were coming down here and you jumped on top of the spikes, you could maybe go through a secret passageway here that would lead to this secret room. And then that could lead through this already existing false passageway out into here and skip a good chunk of the level. There's actually, I think Act 2 and Act 3 both have something like that. Act 1 doesn't have anything like that. So missed opportunity there. But you could also even include some level here. There could have been, content here. And that could have introduced some player choice, player agency. But it's Act 1, so we're just kind of introducing, all the different aspects of the level. It's like, okay, we're going to introduce lava. We're going to introduce, the interior of the castle. So we're going to do an exterior section, then an interior section. You're going to push a block onto a switch, which is a waste of time. I don't really know why it's there. But then you're going to get an optional checkpoint and an optional shield. And come down here. This is a really cool set piece. I do love this section where the blocks are falling from the ceiling. Really cool. Then you've got some traps to navigate, and then we're back to the exterior, and it's the end of the level. And that's Marble Zone Act 1. It's pretty simple, but it's all right, I guess. Definitely not the best level in the game. One of the weaker acts, I would say, but I like Act 2 a little bit better. I do have my problems with Act 2 as well, but we'll go over them as we tackle this level. So we start out outside the castle, and we cut to the chase really quickly with this one in terms of going immediately into the castle section again. We're given our first section where we have to push the block. I think that we probably could have just had the blocks be... We really don't even need this section. We don't even need the section from Act 1 of learning to push the block onto the button because if you don't learn to push the block from here, even if you brute force this using your rings, you've got to push the block to continue here. So I don't really know why they insisted on using that the block pushing puzzle in that's not really even a puzzle in Act 1 but it's whatever. It's not the worst thing in the world. It doesn't make or break the level. So come here, we push the block. We learn of lava coming from the ceiling. There's fireballs shooting from the walls. This is definitely like the one that leans into the lava theme the most, I would say, of the 3 acts. And then you can come up here. You want to go out of your way, you can get this ring box and this shield box. Cool stuff going on. Another cool set piece with the bats. The bats in this room. Then the cool set piece of navigating the swinging platforms. The caterpillars in this narrow passageway, which teaches you that maybe rolling through enemies is a better idea than jumping on them sometimes. I think that's a pretty cool way of introducing that concept. Then you come here, you really have to push the block this time, except you really don't, because skilled players will eventually learn that you can actually jump from once you push this block a little bit, you jump onto this platform, kind of back up and get a running start, jump onto this platform and jump over to here and not have to wait for the platform, which I think is a really, really, really cool way of incorporating this kind of puzzle or this obstacle challenge, and then also incorporating a way of kind of circumnavigating it. And then this block is also here to kind of serve as a way to go backwards if you screw it up the first time, but also as a way of when the lava rises out of here, but also as a way to clue you in that there might be a false wall here. There's an extra life. Just little hints like that I love. So you come here, you leave the castle, you're back in the courtyard for a little while. So you come to this section and you roll through these blocks, which is fun. I always try to get the maximum score, going back and forth, making sure there's not a block left. I think everybody I've seen do it tries to do that. Even though you don't even really get very much for score in this game, but it's really satisfying, I guess. You come down here, you got the double lava tubes. The invincibility box, which if you haven't figured out what invincibility does by now, probably learn here, because it's really nice to be able to just ignore the lava completely. So then you've got the kind of the obstacle course going back up here, and that's the end of the level. Moving on from that, we'll go to Marble Act 3. And this one is more interesting in that it's more of the gauntlet style, right? It's the you enter into the castle and then you don't come out until the level's over. So this one actually does have some branching paths. You can go left or right here at the start. It's the first time you really get a choice in Marble Zone where to go, which is a little disappointing. I wish Marble Zone had a little bit more freedom in that way, but you can go left and face some collapsible platforms. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention about Act 2 is I love the set piece of the lava chasing you. Absolutely such a cool moment. Part of why I love Act 2. But wish we had that again in Act 3. But Act 3 we're in more of the gauntlet style. So there's traps everywhere, there's lava everywhere. It's really focused on really pushing you to your limits of how much you can juggle in terms of how dangerous it feels to be in this zone. We come to this section. This section's probably the worst design area of Marble Zone. I do not like that there's no way to bypass this section. If there was one change I would make to Sonic 1, it may be to incorporate some way to bypass this section. Because this is the only time in Marble Zone that you have to push this block and you have to wait for it. You just have to ride it, and then when the lava comes up, if you don't, and what's worse is if you miss the lava jets or if you mess up the jump twice, you just have to take the L and die and do it all again. It's so infuriating. My least favorite part of Marble Zone. But other than that, I generally like this act. Again, so we've got kind of the divergence and the convergence. Whether you take the left or the right path, you'll link up around here. And then you got to do this section of the stage. What's cool is you got the secret passageway here, skips a huge chunk of the level, gets you an extra 1-up. Is what I was talking about earlier, that Act 1 needed this. And then this actually, there's another, you could just return, but if you're clever, you can check out this wall as well. And this is also a false wall. You come out here. Or actually, you come out here and could potentially die to this spike trap. So otherwise, though, you move downward. Got some more navigating the swing platforms. I do think there are bats in this part. So I think it's a little bit more challenging than the section in Act 2. The crusher parts of the stage. I don't do this part of the stage ever. I always take the 1-ups, the 1-up shortcut. I haven't done this part of the stage in so many years at this point, I bet. But we got some more block breaking. Some fun stuff where the platforms move across this little section of the stage here. Then we got some more traps to navigate, and then we enter the final room. Now, what I think is cool about this room is that there's the room loops on itself. So you have to go left here, right? We have to navigate this block push again. But again, we can. This is kind of where the player learns. Okay, maybe I can just jump from platform to platform instead of taking the block, which then again, whenever you replay Act 1, then that section in Act 1 becomes more intuitive. But then whenever you come to this section and you come up the stairs and you do this part's very dangerous, but it's not over a bottomless pit, right? It's not instant death if you fail. If you fall, instead, you're falling into lava. It's a little stressful, but you can recover. There's several rings on these platforms. You can potentially save some. If you missed them earlier, you can pick up some of your rings as they fall into the lava. And you get to try again without having to go back to the last checkpoint, which was all the way back down here, actually. And I don't know. I think that's really cool level design. We don't see Sonic zones do that very often. So this is a huge, this room in particular is just a huge set piece in itself. And that's pretty cool. So then when we finally are able to make it out on the other side, then we have the boss, which, is a boss. I think it's a little bit easier than the level that precedes it, but that's Sonic 1 bosses for you. So that's Marble Zone. Now we go on to Spring Yard. First of all, I love how much of this zone really is kind of choose your own kind of way of navigating it. You can take the top route all the way through the level, or you can take the bottom route all the way through the level until you get to this section. Until you get to kind of this section here is the time they finally converge. Spring Yard, controversial level in my opinion. More fun than Marble and Labyrinth probably, but less fun than Green Hill, Starlight, and arguably Scrap Brain. I think it's if you consider Sonic 1, fast stage, slow stage, fast stage, slow stage, fast stage, slow stage, Spring Yard is the weakest of the fast stages, I would say. That being said, there's some cool things about it. The spring launching you up the ramp and then getting up here to the extra life and speed shoes, very cool. Cope, classic. Really cool kind of out of the box level design. We talk about these elevator sections being an absolute drag. You can actually skip most of them. But there's some that you can't skip. This one seems unskippable. And for first-time players, I would say 99% of first-time players are not going to skip it. But you can actually take this spring, and it will actually launch you over the level, and you can actually go over the level and into this section here. Never would have thought of that as a kid. I had to watch like a speedrun or somebody do it, and I was like, I never would have thought of that. But yeah, you can logically think, I think the problem is that in the original kind of layout, when they were originally playing this game, Spring Yard was supposed to come before Marble Zone. And I think the problem is that in Marble Zone, we have in Marble Zone we have too many of these walls that are just way too big. Like there's no overcoming them. And so that kind of teaches you, okay, there are walls that are effectively infinite in height. And Spring Yard launches you, even though it launches you over the ceiling. I think as a kid, I just thought, okay, well, this wall just extends up past where I can see. But in reality, no, you can launch right over it. And the problem is that in some other Sonic levels throughout the games, that is the case where you can't go over the walls. So you wouldn't think to do it, but you can in fact go over the wall. In which case, this part of the level becomes, the way forward. But what's cool is that in this section here, if we come through this kind of elevator section, roll down this hill, go through this tube, and up on this side. If we hit this switch and take this platform up, we actually can backtrack to that section and head over here. And so this just becomes like a little secret outcrop. So this is you're either going this way or this way, depending on how you approach it. Just cool, multifaceted level design. So then from there, we can take the upper route or the lower route. Most players, I think, are going to be taking the lower route at this point. Because if you don't know the shortcut, the only other way of getting up to this upper route is by hitting the switch and then immediately jumping on this platform, which is actually not all that easy to do. But if you take the upper route, you've got a lot of extra rings, an invincibility box, some extra fun stuff, and the bottom route is actually a lot of obstacles, a lot of dangers, a lot of hazards. So this is the first time we kind of see there being a reward for. I think Spring Yard Zone Act 1 does a really good job of rewarding skilled play, and saying, yeah, sometimes if you just do things right, you can have a fun and easy time for the rest of the level. So here, and we got another elevator section. I think this would have been more fun if we had like, you remember in Death Egg Zone, Sonic 3 Knuckles, where you've got the springs and then on the other wall, spring, kind of going back and forth, almost like wall jumping. I think if we had like a spring on this wall and then a spring on this wall, and then taking that all the way to the top of this building, would have been way cooler than just another elevator section. Cool hidden wall to kind of bring some rings here. I would have thought it would have been cool if they had incorporated some level here, kind of maybe within the buildings as another route through. That way we could bypass this elevator section as well if we didn't take the upper route. But from here, the routes converge, and we have some obstacles to navigate. And then what I like here is the feeling of like jumping between buildings, right? Jumping from building to building. We get some like Spider-Man type beat to it. And then we've got one more way. This level feels like it has 3 mandatory elevator sections. But we have once again another way to bypass it, and that's this little switch with the hidden wall here. So Act 1 goes out of its way to make sure that there's a way to bypass every single elevator section of the level. And I really wish that would have been continued into the other acts of Spring Yard. But unfortunately, we're going to see that it's not the case. So it wasn't meant to be. So here we go with Spring Yard Act 2. So first of all, set piece level design. Love this drop into this half pipe. Classic, beautiful, and it's not the only time that Spring Yard uses it. Freaking brilliant. I love it. And if you are able to get up on the higher route, you are able to once again skip this elevator section. And again, we have something here where it's like, okay, we've got like a little stair step of springs. You could have just done that instead of having these elevators here, but whatever. I didn't make this level, though. There is this little shortcut here as well, which I actually didn't find until I was an adult. And you're able to kind of find an extra life beneath the level here. And I never would have thought to look for that, mainly, especially because I always take the upper route in this level. So anyway, extra invincibility box over here in the corner, kind of dope. Again, kind of the jumping between the buildings kind of beat. Some cool stuff going on here. I might have been a little too harsh on Spring Yard Zone in my ranking video. I might like Spring Yard Zone better than I thought. There's a lot to like here, but I don't think a lot of these concepts, they look cool when the level's zoomed out. I don't think it translates as well when you're actually playing the level, unfortunately, as it doesn't translate as well as some of the others. However, this big ass ramp, brilliant. Love the opportunity to pick up some speed, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. It doesn't really do anything for you, unfortunately. So we do have the bumpers area where you can get some extra rings and some shield. Upper root and lower root, just kind of for the sake of fun. And then here, you've got a really interesting kind of unique thing where you've got an upper root with some extra rings and an extra signpost right at the end. I think there's only one other act in the game, and really only one other act in Sonic history that does this, if you don't count Knuckles' roots through Sonic 3. And that's I think also in this game. I think it's Starlight. So very interesting that there's the branching paths here. And of course, if you don't make this jump on the first try, you can't get up there. But it's cool because a lot of hazards in this level, so it's as we're getting kind of later in the game, it's an extra chance to get some extra rings if you're just short, if you would otherwise just fall short of getting into the special stage. So it's pretty cool. So that's the last of the fancy maps by what's his face, Terra Esper. Unfortunately, now we're going to be using the equally cool but not as visually appealing export from the Sonic hacking tools that I have. So here we have Act 3 of Spring Yard, and what problem I have with Act 3 is we've got this big ramp right here at the start. Once again, really great, love it. Not really much you can do with it. Once again, you can build up this huge amount of speed, hit this little bumper, and then just not really go anywhere with it. You can't really jump off anywhere and land anywhere cool necessarily. Maybe you're able to land on this platform and get this invincibility, but really nothing special, nothing just crazy. And I think you're actually even able to get there with the red spring, but don't quote me on that. This little section here, the rings down here, the rings here show you that, hey, sometimes you can get underneath the level or outside of the level's bounds. And that would have been a great place for that to be here as well. And for there to be more level this way. And why they didn't take that opportunity, I don't know. That would have been a great way to bypass this elevator section. But unfortunately, right here, this is the first required elevator section in Spring Yard Zone. And it drives me mad that in Act 3, we can't bypass this. But we can get all the way to Act 3. Once again, Marble Zone was the same way. We couldn't bypass the block thing going on. Unfortunate that they decided to do it that way, but this boring ass elevator section unfortunately is here. Then we got kind of a place where we can choose upper or lower path again. Again, a lot more obstacles, a lot more hazards in this stage than in the first two acts. But then we have the best set piece in Spring Yard, and that's where they said, okay, we're going to take the entire vertical length of the level and turn it into one big half pipe. Brilliant. I mean, no notes. Brilliant. And you don't even have to get all the way up here. I would have liked if there was like an extra life up here, but you don't even have to get all the way up here to get the bonus. You just have to get halfway up to get the invincibility and the speed shoes, which is pretty cool. So brilliant stuff. And then here you even get the choice. You can go up, take the upper route here, or take the lower route. Or actually, it's not really a choice. It's actually a skill challenge. It's a skill check. Basically, you can come here, you hit this switch, and then as this block is moving, the block moves into place right here and blocks off this section of the level. And so if you're able to navigate this little obstacle course here quick enough, you can actually get behind the block and then get the extra rings and the shield, which is pretty cool. I like that that's there. Interesting thing. The level actually places these crab meats here, even though when you're actually playing the game, they show up down here. Always thought that was interesting. We cope once again, and then we've got the last set piece of the level, and that's these moving platforms. So reminds me of something out of Chemical Plant Zone more than Spring Yard Zone. But then we got this last section and then the boss fight. If we look at Labyrinth Act 1, we're going to start to kind of see the problems with Labyrinth Zone. That being namely that it's not really a labyrinth. So we come in, we're immediately introduced to water, which is cool, I guess. And then we come into this big room, and if you didn't know, there's a secret where there's this little item right here, this little kind of just this little speck, and it only appears if you hit this switch. That's what you have to do is you have to drop down into the water, hit this switch without triggering one of these platforms, and then use this platform to carry you upwards, and then use the momentum of it to jump onto this block. Then without getting hit by this guy or this guy, then jump back up to here without falling down and without getting sucked into this tube. And then you can climb your way back here, and then this platform will take you to this shortcut, which will then take you to the end of the level, basically. And that skips most of Labyrinth Act 1. How anybody found this as a kid, I don't know. I only found it by using this level editor, or by using a level editor later in life. It's kind of crazy that Labyrinth has that kind of secret, but Labyrinth Act 1 is really just a straight shot to the end otherwise, and just kind of introduces you to the water physics and the water mechanics. Interesting to note here is that the water level sinks when you enter this room, just to raise whenever you enter this room, and that's what the map is kind of signifying with the green and yellow areas, is it then raises to this level. Just to like show you how the sponge works, I guess. I don't know. Kind of interesting that it does that. And then, yeah, you come through here, and then you might see this area and think, oh, there must be some kind of shortcut somewhere that I missed. But other than that, I don't know how anybody found that. So there's Labyrinth Act 1. Here's how I would have done Labyrinth Act 1. So the problem with Act 2 is it's the same thing. It's just a straight shot. You come down here, you go through, you come out, you spit out to this room, you hit a switch, you fall down, you do some more stuff, you're at the end of the level. It's a straight shot. It is the most linear level in Sonic the Hedgehog, and it's called Labyrinth Zone. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. So then we come to Labyrinth Act 3, which is interesting. So I'm going to pull this one up in Affinity Designer specifically because what's interesting about Labyrinth Act 3 is that it loops vertically. You probably noticed this from the beginning of the level. Whenever you start out, if you fall down the water slide, you can just keep falling forever and ever and ever, and it'll keep looping. And that's also partially why the background of Labyrinth Zone looks the way that it does, because it has to tile seamlessly as well. You can't have a top and a bottom of the background when it loops, when it's supposed to loop endlessly, or else the loop wouldn't be seamless, right? So if we, with some magic trickery, I'm gonna hide some of the magic trickery from later. But with some magic trickery, we can actually press this, and we can actually see how much of the level uses the loop, uses the fact that it loops vertically. Because you can see it's actually not just this section here at the end, or here at the beginning. We first of all, this is the only Labyrinth Act that has a shortcut in it, which is automatically puts it higher up for me. Or I guess Act 1 has a shortcut, but the fact that it has a shortcut at all puts it up there with me for me. But so we trigger the button. We go through here. We get the choice of going down or going up, and most players may not even notice that you can go down here. And a lot of times I would think instinctually that that it would be, that you'd be worse off falling down there, but in actuality it's the shortcut. And it's a subtle hint actually in the credits of the game. We actually see Sonic going through this section because this is the only time you actually grab on. We actually do this thing where you grab onto these handlebars and such, and are pulled through the jet. It's the only time in the levels that we do that. And so when we see that in the credits, that tips you off like, oh, I didn't see that. Maybe there's something I missed. And we see actually where the level loops. This is actually the bottom of the level. So if we were to kind of bypass the different, if we were to get rid of the other parts of the level, if you just look at the raw format of the level, you can see these bubbles are attached to nothing. There's nothing here. This is actually, when you're in this section of the level, you're actually standing on the top of the level and are seeing the bottom at the same time. Really, really clever how they did that. And then what's cool about this section is that then if we remove if we remove the kind of blacked out sections, but then we get rid of the loops here, you can see what this section does is you come out at this part of the level, whether you come from the upper section or the lower section, and then you do this really, really long climb. And while you could say it serves to like feel like you're climbing out of Labyrinth to then get to Starlight Zone, which does kind of add to the fiction of the level. What it's really there for is to hide the loop from the bottom of the level to the top. Because the problem is we've got this big long section here where we fight Eggman, or we chase after Eggman. And we need the water level to rise during this section. But the problem is that if this section were to cut through, if we were to start it here, it would hit the top of the level. And the water wouldn't be able to loop back down from the bottom to the top. You wouldn't be able to hide the seamless transition. The only reason this section works and is seamless is that the water's not there, right? So what they had to do is they had to make you do this big old long climb in order to get you back at the bottom of the level, so that then they could use the entire length of the level for the water to rise, or the entire height of the level, I should say, for the water to rise. Pretty cool little technical trick. And it's interesting that this is one of the only levels we see it in Sonic 1. Okay, so you'll notice I'm wearing a different shirt now. That's because we're on day 2. I ran out of time when I was initially filming this. I didn't know I had so much to say, but we're going to pick up where we left off here, and hopefully my camera will stay on the whole time this time. I'm going to be keeping a better eye on it in case that happens again. So starting with Starlight Act 1. Starlight's very interesting in that it really has a hard time fitting into where it lands in Sonic 1's level order. In some ways, it's easier than Spring Yard. In some ways, it's harder. In some ways, it's easier than Labyrinth. In some ways, it's harder. It's one of the only zones that really has these bottomless instant death pits littered all over the place. Here. Just in Act 1 alone. There's a lot of places you can fall to your death. But most of the level is above those death pits. So what I find interesting about Starlight is that you have the lower route that you can take. Here you kind of have a choice. If you want to keep your speed, you can go up this ramp, and then you can take the upper path through the level, or you can take the lower path by going down here. The thing is that the lower path is harder. And it's the only time the lower path is really harder at any point in this game. The upper path in both Act 1 and Act 2 is very, very easy to follow, and there's almost no resistance. You take a spring up here, and that basically takes you toward this, you can jump on these platforms, and there's actually like a little invincibility box up here, and we can zoom in to get a better look at these things. Or it's a ring box even, not even a invincibility box. Hey, you come here, get a ring box. You can kind of get lost and you can kind of do some extra stuff, but in reality, you're really just coming up here and that's the end level. There's a really fast way to get through all 3 acts of Starlight, and to me, they're pretty much the most obvious paths. But if you were to, for some reason, take the lower route here, or even if you took the middle route, the middle route is a little bit slower, but it's still probably just as easy. It pretty quickly takes you from here. If you don't take the spring, you come down here and you've got the kind of stair stepping with the fireball shooters here. And then you again have a choice of going up or going down. And again, going up is the easier choice. And it may not be the most obvious choice here because you do got to hit the platforms from the bottom and they lower down. But here you get this just kind of links up. You get an invincibility box and then it links up with the upper root of the level. So I guess if you're going maybe for max score or max rings, you would take maybe a middle route. But I don't really see a reason for the level design. Just lacks a certain cohesion, and doesn't have a clear. It's just kind of meandering. It's just kind of all over the place, I think. It's all over the place in terms of difficulty. You'll note that while the stage is relatively easy, I would say, to navigate, the badnik design and the bottomless pits are there to kind of like give an artificial inflation of the difficulty because it's supposed to be the second to last zone. But in reality, they should have just leaned into it being just a fun, kind of quirky highway zone, in my opinion. So, yeah, the level design kind of all over the place. I think what should have happened was they should have put this kind of level design, the floating platforms and such, and the tighter platforming. I think should have been the upper route, and then they should have made the super fast kind of going through loops platforming. That's the fastest route through the level. I would have had that be the lower route. That way, if you fail the upper route, you know, the stakes are kind of low because you still can fall down and save yourself in the lower route. But make the lower route be the fast route, make it be the fast lane, you know, since it's a highway. But make that, you know, make it have still bottomless pits, make it have badniks, make it have stuff you have to avoid in order to go fast. So it's the kind of the high risk, high reward path through the level. That way, the punishment for failing the easier path, the platforming path, is that you have to take the more dangerous route. That would have been a really interesting twist on the traditional Sonic level design of the upper route being the safer route, or the upper route being the faster route, I would say, and would still make it to where the different paths through the level have something interesting about them, rather than Starlight just being just take the very obvious optimal path to the goal. So that's Starlight Act 1. Act 2 is not much different. In fact, it kind of it's an even better example of everything I just described, or an even more egregious example, maybe even, if you want to put it that way. We'll take a look here. Can I drag this? Boop, boop, boop. So here's same thing. Even more egregious example. You can see even when it's zoomed out, or especially when it's zoomed out, you know, you start the zone, you start the act, loop, take the upper path, you cut through half the level by just this part alone. You just go up and down some, and suddenly you're a skip and a jump from the end of level. And these platforms come down, you take these down, jump up a couple times, fall down, and you're at the end of the level. It's the simplest level in the game. Very typically takes less than takes less than a minute to get through this stage. And again, it to me seems like the most obvious route through the level. If at this point in the game you've learned that the upper path is the fast path, you're gonna instinctively take this ramp up, and then all you have to do is is jump onto this platform and then keep going right. And it very obviously takes you on the fastest route, I think. Otherwise, though, you know, if you want to take the lower route, you know, you take this path. You do get a lot of rings, which is cool. And then you do go underneath this Orbinaut and you do some more loops. And then even still, we're near the end of the level. Starlight Act 2 just does not have a whole lot of substance and just doesn't have a lot going on. I want to like this stage more. I think that there's a lot to like about Starlight. I like going fast. I like the double loop-to-loop, you know, in the middle path here that nobody ever takes. But just the execution's just kind of shallow. I don't know. Cool detail. This is the last stage in the game with a special stage ring, and they very specifically put these boxes here. There's 5 ring boxes here in the corner, and that kind of gives you a really easy time. Make sure that if you get to the end of the level, you have a way to get the special stage ring, just in case you haven't gotten all the Chaos Emeralds by this point. They wanted to make sure you had one last attempt, I guess. If you're missing 2, though, I mean, get fucked, I guess. I don't know. But so then we go to Starlight Act 3. So this one's got a lot more going on than Starlight Act 2, which is nice, I guess. I really love this first kind of set piece, where we come down the ramp and then we make this massive jump, get some rings, and if we're good, we can land on this what do you call it? Seesaw. And we can kind of take a shortcut doesn't skip all that much of the level, but skips having to climb up manually, I guess. The lower path, again, is just more dangerous for not a very good reason. There is a 1-up and some invincibility here. That's nice, I guess. But not just... Oh, shit. I want to zoom out. There we go. Not just super necessary. I'm trying to use I got a drawing pad for my birthday. And I'm taking the opportunity to use it in this video. I'm still trying to figure out all the controls and such. But I quite like it. Shout outs to my girlfriend's parents. Give me this drawing tablet. It's pretty cool. So you come up, but of course there's an invincibility box right here. So you're not missing too much if you don't need the extra life. So again, the bottom route, more dangerous, slower, not really much incentive to take it. I guess a shield and some rings here, but who cares? You know, the boss isn't hard. I don't think. I guess again, if you're going for a score run, maybe, did people do score runs of Sonic 1? I don't know. I always felt like the time bonus was better than any score you could get by just going off on your own. But anyway, you go up here though. Again, cool set piece. This whole opening section of the level, I would say. That's a very pleasant looking circle, I must say. The bombs on the ceiling are pretty cool. Pretty cool touch. Pretty cool. Interesting subversion of the level design so far. Some good loops. Again, you can take the upper path or the lower path. The triple loop here is pretty insane. Gotta love the triple loop. Feels pretty good. Random spiky swing here. Only time in the level it shows up. Actually, I think there might be one. Oh yeah. There's another one over here. Not sure why they decided to just throw those in at the last second for Starlight. But I don't know. Some of these zones, it feels like they save some mechanic for Act 3. It's almost never something that fits with the level, I don't think, in my opinion. And it just kind of comes out of nowhere. But you know, whatever. Doesn't detract, I don't think. I guess whatever. Keeps the zones from getting stale into Act 3, which is something that they were worried about for every other Sonic game, so they no longer had them have 3 acts. So yeah, mostly the same from Act 1 and Act 2. Just whole lot of going fast, I guess, and some more. They incorporate the seesaws a lot more into the level design of Act 3, I think, to really make sure you have a grasp of how they work before you get to the boss. But then you fight the boss, and that's Starlight. I mean, not too much to say about that. Cool zone. Not offensive in any way, but you know, just kind of there, I'd say. And then we have Scrap Brain, which I raved about in my video, ironically enough. I wasn't expecting to. And then I really enjoyed it. So lots of cool stuff going on in Scrap Brain. What I like about Scrap Brain is that each act has its own identity. So we have kind of the outside factory level. The kind of navigating the kind of factory city type feel. You know, these kind of, the layout here resembles kind of the buildings from Jesus Christ, Spring Yard Zone. And as we kind of climb upwards, it kind of gives the feeling that we're navigating buildings. Sometimes from the interior and sometimes from the exterior, you know? And what I like about this one is that at the beginning, you have kind of a choice of different paths that take you on basically completely different levels. They do kind of join up near the end, but you know, if you take the spinner here, if you take it down, you will go down this little gauntlet, and this gauntlet goes across the entire level. And you come out here, and now you're on kind of this stairwell toward the end. It can just be kind of a straight shot, or if you're like, okay, I don't want to take the inside path, I want to take the outside path. You can either go up or you can go down, or you can go to the right, rather, I guess, which takes you down. But they sync up here should you fall. They'll sync up here because you come up from here, and from there are opportunities. I thought there were opportunities. Maybe there's not. I was thinking there were opportunities to get back up here. But actually, I don't know that there are. I think once you fall, you fall, which is interesting. especially because I don't know that this is necessarily any easier or different or meaningfully very, very, very different from anything else in the level. So not really too much incentive to stay on the path here besides grabbing this ring box and this ring box, I guess. But I don't know. Just interesting level design. They were kind of just seeing what works here. But these rooms with the crushers kind of always stuck out in my mind. It's very much set piece design. The different there's 4 of them in the level, but you're likely to only see maybe 1 or maybe 2 as you go through. And there's actually a way, if you were to take the upper path here, and then the lower path here or the middle path here, you would avoid them all, which I think is interesting. And in fact, that's usually the route I take through the level. And I think that's probably the fastest, since those little crusher rooms take a while. And then this cool, I like this kind of staircase design with the teddy bear type, or piggy bank. Are they pigs? Or are they bears? I thought they were. I thought they were pigs. Maybe bears. They're bears, right? Are these teddy bears or are these pigs? I don't think I know. I always assumed they were pigs. They kind of look like teddy bears. I don't know. That's it's kind of tripping me right now. But anyway, no, that's Act 1. And Act 2 is interesting because it's similar to Starlight Act 3 in that we have a looping level design. So if we take Scrap Brain Act 2 here, we copy it and then we paste it and then we place it on top of each other, maybe place it kind of vertically like this. We'll see how it links up. So just like Labyrinth Act, this is actually why Scrap Brain's background changes. Really, I think, besides just giving the impression that you're moving into the factory and the story implications of that, they needed the tileable background. You know, the background for Scrap Brain Act 1 has a clear top and bottom. They needed a background that could tile and be seamless, so that they could have this vertical looping thing going on with Scrap Brain Act 2. And what's interesting to me is that you would almost never know that was going on, because it's just not totally obvious. But the way that the level is designed is actually there is no floor in this section. The floor in this section is actually the ceiling of the level. And you can see that here. The floor in this section is actually just the ceiling. And I always thought that was interesting. There are some of these loops where you go vertical and you end up lower in the level, which is fascinating. So definitely feels, this level honestly feels like a Labyrinth level more than a Labyrinth level does, because there's actually different choices and they loop in on themselves. And I think that, and we'll see this with Metropolis as well. I think a lot of what Scrap Brain does is really what Labyrinth was trying to do, but Scrap Brain does it better. I think that this is really where the Labyrinth is. And that's ironic because, as we know, Scrap Brain Act 3 is another zone of Labyrinth, and it too does not really have a maze element to it. So strange decisions in the design. But anyway, we'll start from the top because we want to see the floor. And we come through here. We immediately have a decision. We can go up, or we can go low. We can go high or we can go low. If we go high, we come into this room, go through some different gauntlets. We have this, which takes us lower. We end up here, and we come down here and we go through this. And what's fascinating is this room right here is the one, I believe, that maybe it's this one down here. I don't remember. I think it's this one, right? It has to be that one. So I'm trying to remember how this worked. So one of these teleporters is programmed in such a way that's far different than you would expect. So if we go low, yeah, this is it. So if we take the upper path, we end up coming here, going through this teleporter, brings us down here, brings us through this teleporter, brings us down here, go across here, go to this teleporter, that brings us to the end of the level. So if I draw that out, you come here, come here, come here, come here, go here. We go here, come out here, go across this area, go through some more gauntlets, come up here, and this is the end of the level. This is the staircase at the end of the level, right? Fairly straightforward. straight path through the level if you go the upper route. However, if you go the lower route, you have an entirely different path through the level, and you actually have some options, and some cool stuff happens. So if we take the bottom route, you go through here, you go down to this tube. I'll change the color of my my marker so we can see the difference here. Come out here, go across here, do some stuff. Go through this teleporter here. Come out here, go down through this. So now you can see we're descending through the level, which is interesting because now we are above where we started. Right, this is the starting room. We're now above that room, even though we've gone down, which is cool. You actually probably wouldn't see this on screen. You wouldn't be able to tell on screen that that's what's happening, but it is what's happening. So we come here, go through this teleporter. We come up through here. Then something interesting happens. This teleporter is specially coded to check to see if you have 50 rings. If you have 50 rings and you end up in this teleporter, whether you came from this teleporter or if you got some more rings and then came back and stepped in it, it teleports you up here. And this secret room only shows up if you have 50 rings, which is insane. I actually, my preferred method of getting 50 rings to get to it is to actually take the upper route through the level, get this shield, and then backtrack down here to the lower teleporter and then go through, and that shield gives you some grace in case you get hit, and also the extra rings you can get on the upper route give you a little bit of extra leeway as well. This ring box, for example, give you a little bit of extra leeway, and then you can get 50 rings and get to this special teleporter here, and that brings you to this special space where you go through, and you get to kind of just run along these collapsible floors. This teleporter brings you straight to the end of the level, brings you straight to the staircase. And again, it brings you to the staircase from the bottom, but if you were to fall, or if you were to take the lower route, without getting the 50 rings, you'd fall into this room. And if you were to come, through here, you'd actually enter the staircase room from the top, which is mind-boggling and mind-bending when you do it in game and you really connect those dots, but never would have known. And that's Scrap Brain Act 2. Very, very interesting level, very different. A lot of variety. It's one of my favorite levels in the game, actually. I like the feeling of going through the gauntlet. I like the swinging platforms. I like the conveyor belts. I like how they make you rethink momentum. I love the anti-gravity kind of spinning circle area, whatever you call them, conveyor belts, I guess, circular conveyor belts. That was a brilliant design decision. Something fascinating about Scrap Brain Act 2 is Final Zone. All of Final Zone is contained within Scrap Brain Act 2. This is actually also a map of Final Zone. Whenever you enter Final Zone, even though you enter here, it actually loads all the rest of the act before, which I always found interesting. So we fall down into Scrap Brain Act 3, which is probably the most controversial level in Sonic 1. Perhaps the most hated level, but maybe not. And maybe it's not the most controversial level. But interesting thing about this level is that and maybe the scaling isn't correct in this version of because of the copy pasting stuff into this drawing tablet app doesn't really scale them correctly, so these aren't to scale. But what I noticed is that even though they made an attempt to line up the start of Act 3 with the end of Act 3 and the end of Act 2 and the start of Final Zone, they don't line up. There's way too much space between these two sections that shouldn't be there. It should be quite a smaller space, but they made an attempt. The attempt was there. So something interesting about Labyrinth Act 2, or Labyrinth Act 2. Something interesting about Scrap Brain Act 3 is the fact that there are actually multiple routes through this level as well. So unlike Labyrinth proper, you are immediately given the opportunity for a shortcut right at the beginning of the level. So if you press this button and the whatever you call it, the kind of elevator starts to lower. If you're actually quick enough and you roll underneath the ceiling and you roll and you land on the ramp in front of the elevator before the elevator closes off the floor here. If you're able to land in this area, you actually skip huge portion of the level. And from there, you can actually, if you fall, there's kind of a skill check here, where if you fall, you actually fall down and you can't get back up. And you're forced to fall again, and then you link back up with the main route through the level, which is to take the elevator down and then have to go all the way around down into the depths and all the way down and around here. So you can, at the very least, if you just roll underneath the elevator, skip all of this and land here. What's interesting about that, though, is that you can actually, if you succeed the skill check, and you don't get hit by either of these fireball things, and you land here and you come up here, you can actually go down into this pit, grab these rings, and you're all the way to the end of the level. Practically. You've just a few more things to platform. However, you jump over that, land over here, you can drop down, and you're even closer to the end of the level. You can skip huge chunks of Labyrinth Act 3. And I think that's pretty dope. I'm just gonna erase some of my markings here so we can kind of look at some other stuff. Oh, I deleted the level. Whoops! So I probably can't erase without getting rid of the copy pasted thing, so whatever. But some interesting stuff here. I like the number of rings in this level. I like that they put in quite a few badniks to make it feel like this place is really infested. Lots of spikes as well. Even though it is just a recolored Labyrinth Zone, to me it does feel like it's slightly industrialized in such a way. Just because there's so many spikes and so many badniks around. Yeah, not much more to say. I guess another one that's pretty fun thing to note is that the bubbles in this level have a different like ID in the game's code than the bubbles in Labyrinth Zone. The bubbles in this zone are actually programmed to not spawn as often. So if you find that in Scrap Brain Zone Act 3, you find a bubble spawner, you find a little bubble pocket, and the countdown's going down and you're going down, and then Sonic drowns, and as soon as he drowns, you see a bubble come up. That's by design. It is programmed to spawn fewer bubbles, which I think is just evil. But they were like, okay, it's the final level. It's maybe more toxic water, I guess, maybe is the idea. Sells that idea. But it's just diabolical. I can't believe they got away with it. So yeah, it's Scrap Brain Act 3. Very controversial level. But ultimately, as a kid, I hated it, but as an adult, I appreciate it. I think it's cool that they did something entirely different with this level. So that's Sonic 1's levels. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with Sonic 2 though. We'll dive right in. So something interesting. I will kind of grow all the way back up to Green Hill, and we'll kind of do side-by-side comparison of Green Hill and Emerald Hill. I think that might be fun. So if we drop Emerald Hill in, again, the scaling maybe not so much, not so great. Maybe not 1-for-1, but you can see it's a lot more horizontal in its level design. And we're going to see that across the board with Sonic 2. It's a lot more of point A, point B, rather than point A, point B, and having a lot of vertical space. Which is fine. It gives you a lot more space to run, but doesn't necessarily have the scale and the set pieces that Sonic 1's levels have. So we'll drag over here, kind of go over to the right. We'll start with Emerald Hill Zone. So I would say Emerald Hill, a little bit more boring than Green Hill. Doesn't really bring anything new to the table, to be honest. It's kind of Green Hill again, but maybe slightly faster. Maybe a little bit more fast-paced. Maybe a little bit more horizontal. I like the palm trees better in this one, though. I actually like the Emerald Hill music. It smacks, for sure. But I don't know. It's probably my least favorite first level in the Sonic games. Even Palm Tree Panic, I'd probably put above this one. But again, we do see kind of some delineation. We've got kind of a lower path through some tunnels. And then an upper path that's more speed focused. Has more of the loop-de-loops and the corkscrews and such, which is nice. Corkscrews, they feel like something out of Sonic 1, but in reality, they originated in Sonic 2. Sonic Generations put corkscrews in Green Hill Zone. There weren't no corkscrews in Green Hill Zone. There is no war in Boss Things Hey. Lots of rings to get, lots of checkpoints to hit to get some special stages going. You can get Supersonic in Emerald Hill Zone because there's so many fucking checkpoints in this level. Cool little spaces to find secrets. Getting up into this area is not easy. But decent little secret. Just overall, just not as much to talk about with Emerald Hill as there was with Green Hill. Just doesn't bring just a hell of a lot of new stuff to the table. I do like the introduction in Sonic 2 of the angled springs that launch you not just up and not just out, but up and out. I like that this corkscrew section kind of teaches you that. Kind of corkscrew section, kind of, we'll draw it like that. I like that it teaches you that. But other than that, compared to Sonic 1, there's not much. I went on about Green Hill Zone for like an hour. It felt like, and I don't know. I just struggle to find things to say about Emerald Hill. It's so much more kind of just bland and generic. And despite the fact that I would say it just plays pretty smooth and is an inoffensive first level, it feels more like Starlight Zone in some ways than it does Green Hill Zone. In just that it doesn't feel like it's really testing the player or really teaching the player much about the core gameplay loop. In the same way that Green Hill Zone does. It feels more like I feel like this was when Sonic, I think Sonic 2 really gave the feeling of hold right to win for the first time. That being said, not all Sonic 2 levels are like that. We're gonna come up to Chemical Plant pretty soon, which is a fun one to talk about. But we'll talk about Emerald Hill Act 2 first. So Sonic 2 really established the formula of Act 1 introduces the level, and Act 2 iterates on the formula of the level. So Act 2 of Emerald Hill has a little bit more going on. And so there's more to talk about. Cool little upper path here. That's not even really a separate path from the lower path. I like that. I like when the level just feels smooth and just feels like there's a lot, like feels dense, and even the straightaways, has things going on. Then there's two checkpoints right next to each other, because we got to get those Chaos Emeralds. And then we have a very clear upper path and lower path. And what I like about it is that you'll see this checkpoint and you'll see this spring as you go through this loop. And so that tells the player, hey, there is most certainly a way to get up here. Obviously, you'll see that there's level design going upwards earlier on the level, but that confirms that there's something up there for you to get, and that this tunnel is not the only way through the level, which I think is okay. It's cool, I guess. The upper route, now we have just hills in the ceiling, hills floating in the sky. Whereas Sonic 1 was almost realistic. Like it had a sense of realism where there aren't just chunks of level. I mean, obviously there are floating platforms, right? But there weren't just chunks of level floating in the air. Emerald Hill Act 2 said, you know what? Fuck it. We'll have chunks of level floating in the air, which is, a decision. Then we have loop, corkscrew, loop, corkscrew. And you see what I mean by Sonic being starting to being known for hold right to win. But what I like is that the lower path is a little bit more hazardous, but a little bit more straightforward. There's a bottomless pit here for whatever reason in the second act of the game. Some spikes, some spiky hazards, some platforming here in case you fall out of the corkscrew for whatever reason, even though you should be just holding right at this point. But the idea is that this is introducing the idea that the upper route is maybe a little bit harder to get onto, but then once you get onto the upper route, you're rewarded by more speed. You know, you're rewarded with these eye candy parts of the levels, which I think Sonic 2 delivers on a lot more spectacularly than Sonic 1 does. So there's that. And then that's Emerald Hill Zone. Like Starlight, it's an inoffensive level, but not really much to write home about either compared to some more interesting level designs in the games. So next we have Chemical Plant, and immediately you see an immediate step up in terms of complexity. It's kind of insane, really, how much more complex Chemical Plant is. It's probably even Chemical Plant Act 1 is probably a more dense and complex level design than really anything Sonic 1 has to offer, except for maybe Scrap Brain Act 2. It's a huge step up, and it immediately changes the game, for the better. There's a reason Chemical Plant has become iconic alongside Green Hill Zone. And I think this is where, Sega's really stepping up their ability to show off what really the engine that they had come up with was capable of. So we have these things, we have these like subtle layers in the level design. And this was as early as Sonic 1. So as early as Sonic 1, we had the loops, right? The idea being, if Sonic approached the loop from the left, he hit a wall. You know, if he was going slow, this is a wall. It has collision. But whenever you go through the loop and you hit the top of the loop, something in the game code changes to say, okay, now Sonic is behind this wall. So he can actually go behind it. And it plays so naturally that as a player, you don't even think about it that way. But it literally has collision and then doesn't, just by going through the loop. And that's... Super Mario could never. Like, it's so cool. And it was brilliant that they thought of, like, that they were like, what if he went through a loop? How are we going to do that? And that's how they did it. Like, how they thought to program that, I don't know. But they decided we're going to expand upon that concept. So now we have these paths in Chemical Plant where once you kind of get started, you can go take the lower path or you can jump up onto the higher path. And then once you're on one, you're locked in to the other or to not collide with the other. And you go in and out and weave in front of and behind the other path. And if you jump here, you land here. You don't collide with this floor here. It's such a fascinating way to show off just what the engine is visually capable of. And it could have just been an upper path and a lower path, but they decided, you know what, we're going to make it look like a DNA strand, because why not? And then, of course, this visual, that DNA strand kind of visual was used in Chemical Plant Act 2 in Sonic Mania as a brilliant visual, just kind of through line. And so, I'm hitting Windows key here. We immediately see the paths diverge, right? What's funny is they cross again. So we can take the lower route and we end up going through here. And we take this path. And if we take the upper path, same thing. We come here, go down here, and then they cross. But the upper path stays the upper path and the lower path stays the lower path, which I think is brilliant. You can also go back. If you hit this spring, it sends you backwards. And then actually there's a third route that's down here. And that takes you somewhere completely different. Which is... it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant level design. And actually, that even has two places it can take you. And I don't actually remember how to choose which one you take. I don't remember if holding down or holding left takes you through a different pipe or what it is that makes you take the different route. But, oh, actually, I think maybe these are all connected, but I actually think maybe this one takes you here, and this one only takes you here. It actually comes out here. And even though the 4 are connected, that's actually how they work. I think that's how it works. I may be wrong about that, though. There may be even more to this level than I understand. There's so many different ways to approach this this level design, and they all weave within, in and out of each other in a beautiful way. And it's arguably the most high speed. You can hit higher speeds and have and feel like you're going fast, even more so than even like Starlight Zone. And that's not even using the spin dash or that's not even including the spin dash or like the speed boosters in this level. Lots of really cool stuff to say about Chemical Plant. Then we come through this section. Again, love the idea of boing, 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 then being sent off. Really feels fun. It's really disorienting, but in the best way. Interweaving paths. This time the upper path becomes the lower path. Even though they actually, if you go through, they actually converge. If you took the lower path, you end up here. You actually end up here through this pipe. Send you over here. And then that's where they kind of link up. Kind of this area. Yeah, and then you have just kind of a straight shot through either through here or through here. Straight shot to the end of the level. Chemical Plant, man. Pretty cool stuff going on. Not too dangerous level in Act 1. Act 2, though, is kind of the first roadblock in Sonic 2, I would say. And this one you can instantly see. Probably the most complex level we've seen so far. Easily more complex than Scrap Brain Act 2. There's just so many things going on. This right here, beautiful set piece. I mean, when you think of Chemical Plant, you think of these huge water slide looking sections that crisscross in this super intricate pattern. It's really hard to tell. When you look at a level like Emerald Hill Zone, it's like, yeah, you hold right. There's some corkscrews and some loops and stuff, but generally, if you hold right and you jump on occasion, you can generally see I never have to go left, right? I can generally just be going the same way. I've seen a challenge run that's like, can you beat Sonic 2 without going left or whatever, without pressing left? And Emerald Hill Zone, it's like, yeah, yes, of course you can. Chemical Plant Zone, a little bit harder to answer that question. There's so much going on. You're taking so many paths. It's hard to look at a point in the level and say like, okay, what's the fastest way to get here? How does the player end up here? You have to actually like, is it like, do I come from up? Is there an upper path that I take and I fall down here, or is there like a lower path that takes me? And actually, it's the lower path, and it's actually right near the beginning of the level because it's this big ramp right near the start that takes you down there. And I'm gonna Control Z some so that I have some drawing room. But we see, we come down the first slide, we end up here, and then we can just continue right. There is a, well, maybe I'm wrong. Is there? Yeah, there's no way to just continue right. I thought there was. We're made to, even though we can see this path here, we can see that this is the way through to the rest of the level. We can't go here. There's something going on with the layers that work the loops that we cannot go here when we first start the level. We are sent upwards, and if we're skillful, we land here. Though if we aren't going as fast, we land down here, and we start going up this way. And then we will take this little piggy here. Funny enough, two checkpoints right next to each other for the homeboys, trying to get them Chaos Emeralds. And then here I actually don't know. Now I'm wondering if there is a way. Yeah, this is only connected up. I don't know how to actually choose which pipe you take. I don't know what if you hold down or if you hold left or what, or if it's random. But there's a way to get shot out here, and there's a way to get shot out here. And I don't know what it is. I feel like I always get shot out here when I play this level. I don't know how to end up over here. I don't know what does it. Let me know in the comments. I actually don't know how Chemical Plant works. But one way or another, we're going to end up on either this slide or this slide. And we're going to be taken to the left side of the level. And we're going to go through some loops one way or another. We're going to end up over here. And then yet again, one way or another, we are going to either end up down here or up here. And either this path or this slide are going to take us through this gate. And something about that gate opens up. And even though we're crossing where we once were, we now link up and now can progress through the level. So we are made to go right and then loop back over to the left and then loop back over to the right, no matter which path we take in Chemical Plant. And there's something really mind-bending and cool about that kind of level design. Platformers before this game would never, ever in a million years think, this is the first game I can think of that does anything remotely like that. And it seems so intuitive and so simple of an idea when it's executed so nonchalantly as this game does it. But in 1992, it was mind-blowing. Chemical Plant, A+. It's cool stuff. So we can, if we have enough speed, we can take the upper path. Or we can take the lower. Doesn't really matter. Here, there's actually a secret path. What I think is cool, and I forget about this path all the time. But right here, you've got a speed booster that sends you through kind of down here through a loop. And once you're through that loop, you kind of forget about it. But if you were to hit the speed booster, stop, skid, come to a skid, spin dash off of here and jump through this wall, you'd find it's a false wall and there's a secret path through here. Leads you to a checkpoint. And this checkpoint puts you through a loop, gives you kind of that rewarding path. That's just, hey, here's some eye candy, here's some speed. Here's loop, de loop, de loop, de loop. De loop. Here's some rings and some invincibility boxes, and it drops you at the end of the level. Actually, I think it drops you here. I think that you can even see that the room here is a different shape. These two rooms are a different shape. Kind of clues you in. Brilliant level design, brilliant secret to find. And the only way you'd even know to look is if maybe you saw this here, which I don't even know if that's on screen, really. You just have to think to explore. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. But of course, many of us don't know that that's there, and we forget that that's there, and we go through this loop and we go down this loop, and we've got the infamous water section. So we get here, we've got the double helix loops again, and we've got the water raising, the platforming, cool set piece. Got me so many fucking game overs as a kid, but cool set piece. And then the really, really annoying moving platform that if you fall, you end up falling down here. Though once the water is there, the way that water physics work, you can actually spin dash off of this ramp and jump off of this ramp. And with the water physics, you actually get enough momentum that you could be launched back up here. But you can only do that after you've completed the elevator section. I always thought it was interesting. Even more evil is these little flippy platforms. You know what I'm talking about. But if you're able to survive that, you finally make it to this section where, once again, you have an evil movie platform. But if you just take the spring, or if you spin dash or you commit, you can get over it. And then my favorite is when you full sprint into the boss room, and then you hit the edge of the screen here, and then these flippy platforms just send you into the bottomless pit immediately. Chemical Plant, cool stage. Also a cool stage, motherfucking Aquatic Ruin. I dig Aquatic Ruin. I think it's probably my favorite kind of traditional water level besides Hydrosity. Hydrosity is my favorite water level, let's be real. But a lot of cool stuff going on with Aquatic Ruin. Cool thing to mention, if we go back to the zoom out, you'll notice there's a very clear path. We can see it from the zoom out. It's a very clear path. No water. You can get through Aquatic Ruin without ever touching water. This is true for Act 1 and for Act 2. It's a little bit more complicated for Act 2. But if you don't want to go through the water sections of Aquatic Ruin, you don't have to. You can completely bypass the water, which in fact, if you include the shortcut in Chemical Plant Act 2 that we talked about, you don't have to enter water in Sonic 2 at all, which I think maybe is why some people like Sonic 2 better. Sonic 2 the most, maybe. Because Chemical Plant and Aquatic Ruin are the only water zones in Sonic 2, which I think is a missed opportunity. I think there probably could have been more water in the game. Of course, Sonic 1, there's only one water level, but it's weird to have exactly two. It's weird that Chemical Plant includes water as the only other water level than Aquatic Ruin. But even still, our traditional water level, what's interesting about these, Sonic 2 has a lot more of these, very clear the lower roots and upper roots. They don't. There are more levels in Sonic 1 in Sonic 2 where the upper root and the lower root are completely separated, or feel completely separated. So here, the idea is that as you go through Aquatic Ruin Act 1, should you fall, so for example in this area, should you stop when you come out of this loop, should you hit this wall and stop on this falling platform, it sends you into the ruins below, and sends you into the area to then have to get through going through the water section. That's true for multiple parts. And what's funny is it's always parts that are partially submerged. Anytime you're partially submerged, it's kind of like a warning sign to be like, hey, react quick or you're going to be stuck in this water. But if you play smart and you play quick, and you keep taking the upper route, you can get through all of Aquatic Ruin Act 1 pretty simply without running into any water. I like the weirdly shaped loop-de-loops here. I don't love the grounders coming through the wall. Shouts to Grounder from the Sonic Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog show. I don't love them breaking through the wall, especially when you hit the spring and run smack into them. It feels a little cheap, but not the worst design in the world. Move on to Act 2, you'll see it is much bigger and much more complex. Significantly more complicated things going on in Act 2 of Aquatic Ruin. What we find is it's much the same in concept though, where it's much more difficult to kind of gauge, but if you can stay out of the water here, if you can at least stay on the upper path of the water, you have a pretty good chance of making it through this level without having to enter the water too much. Or actually, if you stay on the top level, we'll once again see you don't have to enter the water at all. However, this level is much more complex, much more difficult, and the first section, in fact, is probably one of the more challenging sections. I find myself moving a little too fast, trying to rush it, being a little bit impatient, and I fall down into the water. And then you're stuck down here. I do think there is one section in Act 2, and maybe I'm wrong. I forget. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, no, it's actually right here, right near the end of the level, is the first time first and only time you're able to get out of the water. So, but what's cool is the upper path that doesn't include the water. This is about as complex as Emerald Hill Zone. So there's an upper path, a lower path, just within the above water sections, and the kind of hybrid, kind of edge of the water sections, which add just kind of like a new element. Aquatic Ruin really stands out as kind of a hybrid water level in a way that no other Sonic zone before or since really does. And I think that's pretty special, and it makes it one of my favorite zones in Sonic 2. I think. Now it is pretty easy. It is pretty simple. It's pretty short, like most of the zones in Sonic 2. Does not overstay its welcome. or really even stay its welcome, hardly. It's kind of over before it starts a little bit, in my opinion. But still a pretty cool level. Then there's Casino Night, which to me is where, and this is controversial because a lot of people seem to like Casino Night. Never been a fan myself. Never been a fan. Don't know what it is necessarily. I can't point to one thing in particular, but just never been really a big fan of Casino Night. I even prefer Spring Yard, and that's pretty bold, seeing as I really don't all that much care for Spring Yard. Something about, I wasn't just a major pinball guy as a kid, but the pinball mechanics in Sonic were so popular they made an entire game out of it. So I don't know. People seem to like it. I do like that they incorporate the pinball flippers. And I like that there's a Sonic zones tend to follow kind of a pattern. There's almost always a Green Hill type level as the first level. There's often a level with lava of some sort. There's typically a there's a water level, right? There are these kind of archetypes that each game kind of throws its own spin on. And then what Sonic brings to the table that no other game does is kind of the vice level. Whether it's a casino level or a city level or a carnival level. You don't think of like Carnival Night and Casino Night as having much in common, except that they're both set at night. They don't have much in common conceptually, and that their initials are CN, I guess. But yet they have a similar feeling. There's something about them. The vibes are similar, and it's that kind of it's that location you go to have fun, right? That the Vice type of theme that Sonic does that no other game does. Mario doesn't have that concept. Mario has its own forest level, its own green hill, its own water level, its own ice level, its own volcano level, its own castle levels, right? But it doesn't. Casino Night is what makes Sonic. It's one of the only things. It's one of the only levels that is uniquely Sonic. So I have to give it credit there. When I do the Sonic 2 tier list, it will definitely get some points in theming for that reason. Now, in execution, in design, I can't stand Casino Night. I don't know what it is. Just there's a whole lot of kind of global cycles. There's a whole lot of waiting. A whole lot of pinball. Generally, just not a massive fan. The music is fun. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to say. It's just you're just bouncing around. You better like pinball, or else this level is going to be a drag. These sections here, you get launched up into this section here, and you feel like you're fighting the physics, and you're like, just go left, and then you get launched up and you fall off the platform and you're back down here and you're getting launched out again and you're like, damn it. What really bothers me about this level, and I didn't actually know this until I was researching for this video and I was putting together these maps. I found out there's two different versions of both levels of Casino Night in Sonic 2. Okay? So we have Act 1, we have the map of Act 1, and then we have the two-player version of the map. So if you didn't know, Sonic 2, the two-player mode actually uses the levels from the single-player mode. You have like Emerald Hill, Casino Night, I want to say Hilltop, and then Mystic Cave, I think, are the two-player zones. And Casino Night's the only one to have a different map for the two-player versions. You can see, if we do kind of an A-B comparison, a lot of the bumpers and a lot of like the things that are like obstacles in the level disappear, or there's lesser. So this is the two-player version. This is the single-player version. You'll see like in this section right here that I was just complaining about. If we look at that section in the two-player mode, the bumpers are missing. They streamlined the level in the two-player version because they knew that because the two-player version is based on racing to the finish, that there was too much luck involved in who actually got to the finish. Another section is down here. This section here. I remember going fucking crazy in this section as a kid, getting ding 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 between the bumpers and losing my fucking mind. And they removed the bumpers. They removed some of the bumpers in this section in the 2-player mode. Now it could be that there's so many objects in this level, in the 2-player mode, that they had to remove some for like performance. But something tells me that that wasn't it. I don't know. Something just tells me. These are probably the biggest levels in the 2-player mode, so maybe that's the case. But even still, now the big thing with Act 2 for me is that it doesn't build upon Act 1 the way that every other zone in Sonic 2 does. You could maybe argue that the pinball tables are a tad more complex in Act 2, but even then, I don't even know that I would go so far as to say that. This pinball table, the end of Act 1, has quite a bit going on. This is definitely the biggest pinball table of either act, right at the very end, but like even then, it's not that much bigger than the ones in Act 1. There's very little Act 2 does that Act 1 doesn't, if anything at all. And that really kind of is just kind of a drag. That really kind of breaks the standard formula. Now, that being said, I haven't talked about the bosses in basically any of this, because I do want to talk about the bosses separately in another video at some point for these games. But I will say Casino Night has probably one of my favorite bosses, maybe even my favorite boss in Classic Sonic. Just because there's so many different ways to approach how to beat the boss. You can use the pinball bumpers. You can use the ramps on either side. You can spin dash up the side and then land on him. You can spin dash up the side and then jump into him and go back and forth and get to a rhythm. Very cool boss fight. Probably peak boss design in Sonic, in my opinion. It is worth noting. It does knock Casino Night up a few points. It just makes me happy when the level's over. I get to fight the boss from there. I'm happy. And then we get to move on to Hilltop Zone. Quite a big fan of Hilltop Zone myself. I think it's interesting that it's a recolor. It's a complete recolor of Emerald Hill Zone. In fact, a lot of the like tiles and such are the same from Emerald, or really like more like this. A lot of the tiles are the same from Emerald Hill, but it has lava. And it has some pine trees, and it has just different assets and totally different level gimmicks, despite reusing a lot of the same level art. And I think it's stuff like that, kind of like how the grass is the same between Marble Zone and Green Hill Zone in Sonic 1. It's a reuse of assets, but one that feels like it's building the world rather than just being lazy. In fact, for the longest time as a kid, I didn't even notice that they were the exact same assets, just recolored. But little gondola ride at the start. Don't love that it's over a bottomless pit. Wish it were maybe a little bit more forgiving at the start, but just a decent little level. Kind of a cool little. They were like, okay, we want the ruins level for this game instead of being Marble Zone. Instead of being castle ruins and lava, we'll have the ruins be flooded and have Aquatic Ruin, and then we'll have our lava. We'll have our lava level be a mountain. Already some kind of twists on the kind of established formula, even before it was an established formula of level gimmicks. So love these tunnel sections. Love breaking through the loop, down into the loop, down to enter the kind of the tunnel sections. Pretty dope little concept. The checkerboard design. The checkerboard design in Hilltop and Emerald Hill is less overt than the checkerboard in Green Hill, because they kind of moved away from the like early 3D graphics style from Sonic 1, but they kept the checkerboard because they knew that was going to become part of like the DNA of like Sonic level design, which I thought was kind of cool. These gondola rides, pretty cool. Seesaws, making a return from Starlight Zone, but used a little bit differently this time. I always loved these badniks that shot their little spike off the top. I don't know what it was. But they always were super clever design to me. Cool little hidden tunnels every once in a while. Yeah, just straightforward. Act 1, very straightforward for Hilltop, like a lot of these levels. But then Act 2 of Hilltop Zone might be one of my favorite acts in the game, and I'm going to tell you why. Obviously, that's why you're here. But something really funny about Hilltop Act 2 that I actually didn't really even notice or know until fairly recently. I don't know exactly when, but at some point when I was looking through maps because, I just do that for fun sometimes. I'm a fucking nerd. When I was just looking through maps for this game. So I think, one of the big sections of Hilltop Act 2 that a lot of people are going to remember is the Rising Lava section. Definitely one of my favorite set pieces. Sonic 2 was still really good about having... It didn't have as many of these big set piece things as Sonic 1, but this is probably one of the better ones in the game. And I think the lack of those set pieces is kind of what made these zones have, I think, less of an identity and just kind of blend together a little bit more than the zones from Sonic 1. But what's funny is you can skip this section entirely. And in fact, you can skip the entire level in pretty much. This is actually what's so fascinating about Hilltop Act 2. This is actually 2 completely separate levels in one. And I do mean completely separate. Okay? There's technically two ways to reunite the two at the very beginning. But what you'll notice if you're looking at this map and if you're familiar with this level is you might not know that there's actually a path divergence right here. So most people, when they play this level, I think most people, I know when I play this level, at the very, very beginning, you come down here, you maybe break this rock, and you jump down here, and you go through this little loop, and you come down here. And once you're down here, you are on a linear path all the way to the end of the level. Okay? We come down here, gondola rides, and then this checkpoint, right? However, if at the very beginning of the level, you instead were to jump up here, which is not super obvious because it's right at the edge of Sonic's jump height to even get up there when this is at its like highest peak, I think, as it's rising in and out of the lava. And in fact, I think you might even have to spin dash off of this ramp to even get up there. I feel like it shouldn't be that hard, but it's an entirely separate level. This little loop, up here, you climb up. You technically can fall down here and take this gondola, and then this reunites with the rest of the level. And then again here, if you were to go through and take this gondola down, and then if you were to break this block and take this tunnel down and break this block and take this tunnel down, this would reunite you. This would get you an extra checkpoint, in which case you could jump down and get that checkpoint if you wanted to get some extra special stage attempts. But this is actually the upper route that lets you bypass a good majority of the Raising Lava section. But if you don't go down the tunnel and you instead stay on this route, again, which you had to find by jumping on this particular cliff at the very start of the level that most people don't, at least in my experience, you have an entirely separate section here that most people never see. All of this level. I don't know that. In fact, I've looked at the map. I don't know that I've ever played through this section of the level. I truly don't know that I've ever played through it. In fact, I don't know what happens here. Does the ground raise? And that's how you are able to get from section to section? Is it like Marble Hill or Marble Garden from Sonic 3? Is that how this section works? I have no idea. I've never been here. And somebody designed this entire, basically Act 3 of Hilltop Zone. And most players never see it. At all. You go through a loop here, you go down here. There's another kind of mountain section. Completely skips the gondola section down there. And then, you know, you've got this section. Then you've got your own little gondola section in this area. And then we meet back up at this checkpoint right before the motherfucking boss. 2 completely separate levels that connect at the very beginning. Sorry, the very beginning and the very end of the level. 2 completely separate levels in one for Hilltop Act 2. No idea. Also, shout outs to this fucking random chunk floating up in the sky that no players would ever see. Yeah, very fascinating level design. Also, shout outs. We've got this badnik down here that, you know, it's got the little Nessie looking thing. Its head sticks out and then it shoots fireballs. If you, I forget how it works, but there's a well-known bug that if you, I think, spin dash off the top of this gondola and fall down and manage to land directly on that Nessie's head as it's rising out of the lava with enough speed from the fall, you crash the game. No idea why. Couldn't tell you why. But just yet another quirk of this level that I think is just fascinating. Yeah, Hilltop Act 2. Probably my favorite level in the game. Just for the quirkiness of it being 2 levels in one, basically. Then we come to Mystic Cave. Mystic Cave, probably this is about where the game starts to kind of drag on for me. By the end of Hilltop, I'm kind of starting to get lost in the sauce a little bit in Sonic 2. But you know, there's stuff to like about Mystic Cave. We're starting to see the difficulty ramp up. Obviously, Hilltop is kind of a hard mode of Emerald Hill. But we're starting to see the difficulty ramp up a little bit in the game. There's a lot more kind of tight corridors. I like kind of the minecart track kind of design, mine shaft design of the actual level. I also love that it's got kind of an overgrown feeling. Now it's called Mystic Cave, but it actually has no like mystic qualities. I don't really know what the mystic part of Mystic Cave was supposed to be. There's really no supernatural elements. It's got kind of a spooky, kind of haunted carnival type music. Which is strange, because there's nothing haunted about this level. You know, the insect themed badniks, just kind of a cave. You know, maybe abandoned mine shaft was kind of what they were going for. Maybe that's spooky, but like, I don't know. It doesn't seem very abandoned to me. Besides the fact that there's nobody here, but there's nobody here in any of these levels. So, yeah. Pretty cool non-linear level design though. Once again, we have a choice right at the start of the level, where you can go down or up. And then, you know, they converge at a couple of different places. You can at any point decide to kind of weave between the two. And then before long, they converge here. And then you immediately, as soon as they converge, they diverge again. And you can then take another upper route or lower route. And, you know, just a fun little quirky level. Doesn't really innovate on anything in any major way. But you know, I could see this being somebody's favorite Sonic level. I mean, it's fine. It's not yet another inoffensive level from Sonic 2. Then there's Act 2, which has marginally more going on than Act 1. There's definitely more verticality to Act 2, for sure, but still not anything crazy. I do like that there's actually a hidden signpost through this wall. I don't think I've ever known that was there until I analyzed this map. But yeah, there's just a false wall here that leads to a hidden signpost. Because signposts, this was kind of a proto, big giant ring from Sonic 3, where this signpost is not meant to act as a checkpoint. It is meant to act as a place to get Chaos Emeralds as a bonus, you know, as a bonus attempt at Chaos Emeralds. Which is interesting. Again, a lot more verticality in this level. I think it suffers once again from Sonic 2 not really innovating in Act 2. Having Act 2 be an expansion of scope, but not necessarily really bringing anything new to the table. I guess maybe these like little clankety clanking platforms. But yeah, just not really a whole lot new. You gotta love this pit. Obviously, the infamous pit. Where at this point in the game, you know, you're likely to, it's not unlikely that you have Supersonic by this point. And if you were to just be running and you miss this jump to grab onto this little handle that brings down the bridge, you get trapped because this is just a spike pit. And there's no way out. There's nothing you can do. If you fall down there during regular gameplay, you die pretty quickly because, you know, you'll lose your rings on the spikes and then your rings will disappear. Eventually you'll die. But if you're supersonic and you fall down here, you have to just wait for your supersonic to run out. You know, if you come down here with 100 rings, you have to sit there for 100 seconds for supersonic to run out. And it became so like well known in the Sonic community and so kind of memed on that in the remake of the game and the 2013 or whatever re-release, this spike pit was removed. And instead, it's a huge pit that you fall down for a while, and it actually takes you to a remake or really a reimagining of Mystic Cave Zone, which was a scrapped level from Sonic 2. Or sorry, Hidden Palace Zone, actually, because this is Mystic Cave Zone. It takes you to Hidden Palace Zone, which was not in the original game. It was never finished. It existed only as with some leftover assets in the game's files. Including the music, which only exists in the sound test in the final game. So interesting that they kind of acknowledged that pit was kind of infamous by you know, making that be the entrance to Hidden Palace. Now I'm not talking about Hidden Palace today, just because I'm talking about the original games really kind of as my focus. And I don't think Hidden Palace the 2013 redesign I don't think it follows Sonic 2's kind of core structure of level design. It's also a single act. And I also just kind of don't like it. I especially don't like the boss. Boss takes too long. So I usually skip it in my playthroughs of the 2013 version. I still try to avoid this pit if possible. But that pit's the kind of the only thing really just super different and interesting that Mystic Cave Act 2 has going on, besides its kind of expansion of scope. Now I do love just how interwoven the paths are here. You know, you could be coming from here, you could be coming from here, you can be coming from here, and you could snake around this way. You can come down here, and come up over around here, go down here, or come around here. There's so many different ways to get from point A to point B, that it really breaks out of Sonic 2's tendencies to really just hold right to win. So I don't know. It's hard. There's nothing super just fantastic about Mystic Cave that really makes it stand out, but it also is just a solid level at the same time. Just has some solid level design. Now we go to probably my least favorite level in Sonic 2, besides Metropolis, which doesn't even count. Though I do have some nice things to say about Metropolis today. And that's Oil Ocean Zone. What is there to say about Oil Ocean Zone? It's just a rather frustrating level. I don't really know what it is about it in particular. Whether it's getting crushed underneath the little pressure pockets, whatever you call them, pressure valves, or it's the really automated sections, with the spinners that shoot you everywhere. Which actually, are they not in Act 1? They may not. Oh yeah. Here they are. But it's the really automated sections with these little shooters, or it's falling into the oil and dying. I don't know what it is about Act 1, but I've never really been just a huge fan of Oil Ocean. I do find that the level design gets kind of confusing as you take these elevators up and down. It's not always super obvious whether you're supposed to be going right or left. Sometimes like here, it feels like I want to maybe take the slide upwards and kind of like fight against the slide. But in reality, what you're supposed to do is take the upper route. And then you do get the choice of going down and going right here, or you can take the elevator up and go here and get sent through the automated section. But just generally, I find myself getting confused. I don't know. I don't love a lot of secondary colors here, orange, purple, green. I don't really love the color scheme. I always thought it was weird. Mystic Cave Zone has like the carnival theme going on. And I never understood that as a kid, with the music, I mean. And then Oil Ocean Zone has a kind of a desert theme going on, desert kind of music going on. And I was like, why does it have a desert theme? Like, why would Oil Ocean, like, it's oil, it's ocean. Nothing says desert to me. And then I found out where most oil rigs are and how the Middle East and parts of desert parts of Africa are just absolutely ravaged for oil. I was like, oh, it's political, basically. Which I don't know. Either like it or you don't. Masato Nakamura, everybody. Fascinating that there's no oil down here in the corner. I guess because maybe the camera is always locked. By the time you get to the signpost, there's no need for there to be an oil tile here. I don't know. Fascinating, I guess. Yeah, I don't love it. I don't just despise it, but around here is where I start to enjoy Sonic 2 less, and especially Act 2. I generally will stop if I have it my way. I usually, if I start the game, I complete the game. But with Oil Ocean, with the latter half of Sonic 2, I often find myself wishing the game was over by the time I get past Hilltop Zone, which kind of sucks because Hilltop Zone's only the 5th zone. I enjoy the first 3 zones. Casino Night's I enjoy Hilltop Zone, and then the rest of the zones are to me in Sonic 2, and so I don't end up enjoying it as much as Sonic 1 sometimes. But Act 2, again, just kind of more complex than the first zone, not just a hell of a lot more added. I do think this is new, where there's kind of a combination of things going on here. If you get launched into the from the pressure valves into these, like, I don't even know, these guns, I guess. You get sent through this section. Yeah, so not much more to say about Act 2 of Oil Ocean. Just more of the same, really. This section right here, coming down here, going up here, having to go left, having to go, then you have to, I think, continue left, do this section, and then you're spit out like here. Then you can't backtrack really, so you have to go to the right. That's usually where I start to get confused a little bit in terms of Oil Ocean's level design. It always just kind of confuses me. Just kind of gets on my nerves. I was really pissed when this was the other Sonic 2 level picked for Mania. I really would have preferred just about any other level in Sonic 2 get picked. But what are you gonna do? So then we have the boss. And again, I'm not talking about the bosses in this video, but Oil Ocean's boss is the other reason I hate Oil Ocean. It's the worst boss. It's probably the worst boss in Sonic 2. And really probably classic Sonic is probably my least favorite boss. Probably even worse so than the Lava Reef Zone boss. So unlike Casino Night, which has the boss as a major redeeming factor, Oil Ocean's brought down even further by the boss. Now next is Metropolis Zone, and I wanted to bring up Affinity Designer for us to look at Metropolis Zone because there's some cool things going on with Metropolis. So first of all, you look at Metropolis, you look at the zoomed out version of the level, and you're like, what the fuck am I looking at? There is so much going on here. The design looks like somebody vomited, okay? It looks like somebody vomited on a circuit board. However, there's some cool things going on here, okay? When I'm playing Sonic 2, I hate Metropolis Zone as much as the next guy. It overstays its welcome. It should not have been 3 acts. The motherfucking badniks are annoying as shit. And it's an incredibly frustrating level. Really brings Sonic 2 to a crawl in its last third. Right near the end. But when I zoom out and when I look at this level design, there's actually some cool things going on here. So first of all, we have to establish something. Every act of Metropolis Zone loops exactly like Labyrinth Act 3 and Scrap Brain Act 2, where there's the vertical loop. So you might remember this section in Act 1 of Metropolis Zone where you can actually just fall straight down and just keep falling and fall so fast that the screen can't keep up with you. And what's funny is it actually gives away the loop section. Like it's not just, it feels like the level is just, it goes on forever. But it actually reveals that it's a loop in that you will go so fast that the camera will be trying to keep up with you. And instead you will loop back around and then it will say, oh, Sonic is now above me. And the camera will then pan up to catch up to you. And like Sonic will be going downwards while the camera's panning up because you're going so fast. And that kind of reveals, it's kind of a look behind the curtain that the level is literally sending you from the bottom to the top and not looping the level itself, which is interesting. But if we really kind of look at how this level works, there's several, unlike Labyrinth Act 3, where there's, a section like this with the water slide at the beginning that goes on forever, and then the climb at the end. Those are the only times it really loops. And then Scrap Brain Act 2 only looping vertically once. This level weaves in and out. You can see there's several sections where the bottom of the level is cut off and links in with the top. Every act of Metropolis Zone loops in some way that's a lot more substantial. So if we actually were to reveal, the loop, this is actually what the level looks like. From a loop standpoint, and how it links in. And now it's like, holy shit, this is actually crazy. This is like non-Euclidean level design. It's kind of nuts. And what I did was before, and this is kind of what took me so long to put this level together, or put this video together. Is part of what took me so long was preparing this section here, which is where if I press these buttons, you'll see the level kind of this kind of reveals how the level loops. So we'll stick with maybe this version, so that we can see the kind of the slide at the bottom, or at the end of the level. But if we come through here, we start the level. I don't have my pen active because it's Affinity Designer, but you can kind of follow my mouse. We start here at the beginning of the level. We go through. This fucking crab guy is an asshole. We go down, and then we have a choice. We can go up or we can go down. What's funny is if we go up, you'll see by the blue line that we actually loop to the bottom of the level here. And if I remove the black lines, you see we actually loop down to the bottom of the level. And what's funny is we go to the bottom of the level and then we go back down and we loop back around to the top. And then this is actually where it links up. So if we instead, from the beginning of the level, go downwards, it actually immediately splits again. We can go left or we can go right. And if we go right, we can actually meet back up with the left side. You can go through this little spinner, or you can go down this ramp. And then this will bring us through this pipe, or this little rolly thing. And that'll bring us to this room. And then if we were to go right, it would also bring us, or if we came down here and we fell down in this section, it would also bring us to this room. So no matter which route you take through the level, you either go up and come come through this area from the top, or or go down and come into it from the bottom. And then you, despite the fact that you actually cross through the bottom of the level to get there, and then every path converges in this room. You go through this spinner, then you climb up these screws, and you then do like a vertical climb for the last kind of third of the act, where you loop back to the bottom of the level, but then go right, and so that it's actually this big black section here, is this climb upwards to the end of the level, and then you either end up you either end up actually going through, and if you fall down to this section, this platform here next to this ring box actually loops you back to the top of the level. So I actually missed that when I was going through, but it's absolutely possible to come down here, go through these rings, get these rings, drop down here, hit this teleporter again, and loop back down and do it all again, and break the enter the illusion before getting to the slide section if you want to. But some way or another, you're going to end up over here, and you're going to end up in this little slide section. And at some point, you'll head right, and you'll break out of it, and you'll see the end of the level. And this is the simplest act in Metropolis Zone by far. So then we have Act 2. And Act 2 gets real funky real fast. Immediately, we have the choice to go up or down. And the lower portion is already using the top of the level as its floor, which I think is just it's hilarious. Scrap Brain Act 2 did that as well, but something about Metropolis does it all the more elegantly. And you see, we actually have to loop it 4 times for this one to make sense. Which again, the idea of it using the level using this much of the design. Oh, and something else I wanted to show. And maybe I'll end up showing it for Act 3, is just how much vertical space Metropolis is able to use, even if we create this black box. The gray box here, is how much like the total dimensions of the level would have to be in order for the level to be laid out in the way that it is without it looping, right? And all of the stuff that's in black in this gray box would be going unused if it weren't for the fact that it uses the loop. So we're able to get what's in this gray rectangle. Using just the space of, if I delete the black rectangles, we use the green rectangle, and we get basically double the amount of space from just the level's design. They're able to use basically double the height of the base level design just by making it loop vertically, which I think would you could argue that it was done to save on space and really just make use of every bit of the cartridge. But it's actually kind of it's level design that's never been done in really any game kind of before or since, really. In a lot of ways, it's Pac-Man style, where you go at the bottom of the level, you end up at the top. It's Pac-Man style level design, and you don't even really notice it when you're playing if you're not paying attention to it. And many players don't even realize that it's happening and that it's going on. And it's I do gotta hand it to him. It's kind of fucking brilliant. I do gotta hand it to him. As much as I hate Metropolis Zone actually playing it, game's got to respect game. All right. Now for Act 2, if we black it out, I never really noticed how much Act 2 of Metropolis is just a straight up vertical climb. You are just climbing a huge tower. It is the most vertical level, I think, in classic Sonic. I don't think any Sonic level, I don't think anything in CD, anything in 3 Knuckles even remotely compares to how vertical this level actually is. And I never would have guessed that this was the most vertical level in Sonic, just based off of its level design. So immediately we get a choice between the bottom of the top, or go low or go high. You're actually encouraged to go high, because these bouncers all send you upwards, and there's a spring at the bottom. But if you really thread the needle, you can land on either side of the spring and take this lower route, I guess. Or actually, I'm wondering if you aren't able to do that. I actually don't think you, because of this platform here, actually don't think that there's anything for you here. I think that actually, if you end up going right and you fall down, this platform actually makes you take the loop again. Yeah, I think that's what it's supposed to be. So never mind. You don't get a choice right at the beginning. You get a choice between left or right, not up or down. So if we go left, that takes us, you got the praying mantis motherfuckers either way, bastards. But we can either go right and take this corkscrew up, which we eventually get to this part of the level, or we can take the left route, go through a teleporter, get sent over here, and we end up kind of in the same place. Whether we take this route and deal with this praying mantis, or we take the teleporter and we end up at the top of the room. But either way, we end up where we're going right. The exception being, right here, we have our first actual shortcut using portals, like thinking with portals. So I represented it literally with an orange and blue portal here. But this door, if you were to actually take the lower route through this room, fall down here, get this checkpoint, and actually jump down here, land on this platform, and go through here. Alternatively, actually, if you take the right path at the very beginning, you actually can take this corkscrew part of the way up, and there's a little spring yard zone type shortcut where you jump into the level geometry and kind of clip through the wall. And there's a corkscrew here that stops your fall into the lava, but you can pick up the rings and then have a straight shot to the little shortcut door. The shortcut door actually takes you to this part of the level, which in reality is meant to be, you're meant to go from the top of the level and come out this section from the bottom, but you can actually go to the bottom of the level and come out this section from the side. And so then we enter the second layer, the second loop. And from here, it's more vertical climbing. And so technically this section could be all down here, where this portal is. It doesn't actually have to be a second loop. It doesn't have to be the most vertical level in Sonic, if you don't want it to be, but it can be. Booster up here, you climb up here, dash through here, climb these corkscrews, deal with the praying mantis motherfuckers, climb up here, extra life on the spring and the lava, which is pretty cool. The lava in this level always looked really interesting to me. I thought it was interesting how it's a very different style of lava than the lava in Hilltop. Spiky things, teleporter. Come up here, continue to climb vertically. We're now in loop 3 of the stage. This is now the third loop vertically, or it's the second loop down here if you're coming in from the portal, if you want to think of it that way. And then you come up and come up through here and are able to reach the end of the level here. So a lot of cool stuff in this level as well. The vertical climb is very different. And I like that Act 2 introduces lava. I like that they saved lava from to not be in Act 1. Instead, throw it in Act 2. Unfortunately, though, there's Act 3. And Act 3 actually... Okay, I lied. I was going to say Act 3 doesn't introduce anything new. But actually, I guess these platforms right here, these type of double spinny platforms, I guess they're saved for Act 3. So they did at least, wait to they left some stuff for Act 3 to be unique. But when we come to Act 3, I think I masked them out. Yeah. If we start, I think we want to start with the middle one here. We start with the middle one. You start at the beginning of the level. You can go up or you can go down, and this is where it gets really mind bending. And it really starts to show off the looping level design, and it's very reasonable for you to die in this level and get back to the start, and for you to take a different path and then get mind fucked because you end up somewhere where you're not expecting. So, if we take the top route through this level, we deal with this crab dude right in front of the door with no room to jump over him because this level was designed by an asshole. We come through this teleporter, deal with this platforming section, take this corkscrew, and then we end up in this level from the right. We come upwards into this section to end up in this level, and end up in this area. If we go the bottom route through the level, we go down, and we get sucked in here, fall down this platform, and then we enter this level from the left. We enter this area from the left. You either go down and enter this area, or you go up and you enter this area, and it's the same area. And if you were to die at this section, you know, let's say you're on this spinning platform, you get crushed by these spikes, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go up this time, and then you end up in the same room, and you're like, wait a second. How does that work? It's fascinating. It's fascinating. But you'll notice that there's no way, because of the wall here and the falling platform there, there's no way to see the beginning of the level from both ends. So the illusion isn't broken in a single playthrough. It would have to be two different lives. So it's quantum level design is what it is. So anyway, we continue through the level. We end up going through here. And then we have another section where we can either time it right and get kind of banked off of the spinning tube and ends up taking this upper route, or we fall down in this platform and we can take the corkscrews either to the right or up. Either way, we can kind of end up in this section and end up going up into this bouncer section, or we can go up and take this little use this piston to launch us up into this section, and we can go up and right to here. And so here, if we take this route, we end up going through this cog machinery section, dealing with 3 mantis assholes in a row, and then falling down into this section where we take this teleporter onward, or we can bounce up here, take these conveyor belts, bounce up here, and then actually enter the same area of the level with the cogs from below. So once again, twice in the same level, you can go upwards and approach an area from the bottom, or you can go downwards and approach the same area from the top. Quantum level design. Metropolis Zone is actually a cylinder. The level is actually a cylinder. It's mind bending. It's mind boggling that the way that the level designers wrapped their head around the level design enough and play tested it so strongly enough that it worked so seamlessly, and so many players don't even realize the illusion is there. This is how Labyrinth Zone should have been designed. This is what it would have made Labyrinth Zone. And in fact, I'm gonna actually take this design and I'm probably going to use it in like a D&D game. I'm gonna have probably like a dungeon where there are rooms on the south end of the dungeon that when you enter them, you actually end up on the north end of the dungeon. And have like some non-euclidian layouts like that. That's how Labyrinth Zone should have been set up. A strange, otherworldly, doesn't really make sense maze. They had the technology. The problem would have been the water. Like we talked about, the water level in Labyrinth Zone was not set up well to work with that. But they should have done it anyway. Not a good excuse. Metropolis Zone is the real Labyrinth Zone. Don't at me. So either way, we end up, the level converges on the triple cog area here, and we come up here, and then we take this corkscrew up and this corkscrew up, and then this little kind of platform across this bottomless pit. And what's funny is, conveniently here, the level stops looping. So once you get to this section, For some reason here the level loops vertically, but over here the level does not. So if you fall off this platform, instead of the level looping vertically and you falling down here, you fall into a pit and die. Because fuck me, I guess. And then, you know, the Metropolis boss is the Metropolis boss. So probably the most interesting, and actually if we use, what's funny is if we use the blackout box, you have to just describe this level through portals. There's no other way to describe this level than by using portals. They loop. The game loops vertically here and loops vertically there. And there's no other way to describe. There's an extra portal there that's not supposed to be there, but there's no other way to describe this level's design than by portals. And I think there's something pretty special about that. And most people who have played Sonic 2 don't even know it. Wouldn't even notice it. So the last levels we have to look at are, of course, Sky Chase and Wing Fortress. And I guess Death Egg. But okay, now of course we have Sky Chase, which you know, looks about how you expect, but it is kind of fun to take a look at the zoom out and see just how you know, interesting it is to have this section of Wing Fortress cut off. You know, it seems to be a big portion of the ship in the game, but then you realize it cuts off here. There's really just this tiny little portion. And so you come through and then you kind of have this section where you're kind of like going back and forth. And then you start this section over again. And it's kind of interesting to see the tops of the clouds be cut off. See the size of the screen. And yeah, and that's Sky Chase. There's not much to it. There's not much to talk about, you know, it's Sky Chase, right? But I always consider it Act 1 of Wing Fortress Zone. I consider Wing Fortress Zone proper to be Act 2. So then we pull up Big Daddy Wing Fortress Zone. So I'm actually going to maybe cut this here because I don't want you guys to see the zoom out. Okay, so I actually don't want you to see the zoom out first of Wing Fortress Zone. I want you to kind of see it as you would in the game. Because what I like about Wing Fortress Zone is that when you first start it kind of makes sense kind of diegetically. It kind of looks like what like an air fortress would kind of look like. And it kind of has cohesion, you know, it has kind of this dorsal fin or whatever, or this back fin, and then the kind of the bigger dorsal fins toward the middle. But then as you get further on in the level, you kind of don't really realize it. But when you zoom out, the ship kind of stops looking like a ship after a while. This middle section, almost this construction zone type looking area, doesn't really make sense. This looks like it could be like maybe the cargo bay of the ship, and maybe if there was like a backdrop through this section, some kind of like backdrop that kind of united it together as like this open air part of the ship, but still part of the ship. It might feel a little bit more realistic, but instead it's just these floating platforms that connect the front and back of the ship. It kind of reminds me of that part in Halo where you're driving along the back of the Pillar of Autumn right at the very end of the game, and you come to this part where there's this big valley, and you realize there's this tiny bridge. You're on this tiny bridge that connects like the front of the ship from the back, and then like the Pelican comes flying through it. And anyway, if you played Halo, you know what I'm talking about. But when you think about it as the layout of a massive ship, it makes absolutely no sense that there would just be this tiny little bridge connecting the front and back. Kind of same thing here. But I do like that we start at the back of the ship and then we kind of end this kind of cockpit area with Eggman here. The boss of the zone was always a pain in the ass, but it's pretty cool. Pretty cool level design. It feels like we're really kind of like on an airship. And I like the shortcut pretty early on in the level. You can come in, and if you take the upper part here pretty early on, you can actually get on top and get this shield and then jump through, and then these fans will actually blow you into the next part of the level, and you get to skip quite a large portion of the level, actually. It's not all that much, but it's you know, a significant amount of pretty dangerous platforming over some bottomless pits. So I also like that, unlike Scrap Brain Zone in Sonic 1, which didn't have rings to send you to the special stage for whatever reason, this zone actually has quite a few checkpoints to get those last few special stages in if you want to try to get all the emeralds. There's not much time to enjoy Supersonic if you get the last emerald here, but still just a couple more opportunities to get through those special stages if you want to get the good ending of the game. And then, of course, we have the part where Tails picks you up, chases after Eggman's ship. I always thought this this side view of Eggman was interesting. It's the only time we ever see like a profile view of Eggman in these games. Kind of interesting that we see like his neck. Yeah, just interesting art. So this is kind of the last level we're gonna look at, because I mean, if we pull in Death Egg, this is Death Egg, right? That's the whole thing. Not much to it. It looks about how you would expect. There's of course the ceilings that we don't see, which are just the ground again, sort of. And you may have never noticed this before, but it actually, there's a lot of reused assets between Death Egg Zone and Chemical Plant Zone. Because Death Egg was actually going to use Chemical Plant's assets in the same way that Hilltop uses Emerald Hill. And was going to be kind of a continuation of that level in terms of level design. But then they, for time constraints, cut it down to just the boss fights. So these three acts kind of in a row, Sky Chase into Wing Fortress into Death Egg, kind of feel like just one zone to me. Kind of feel like an Act 1, 2, 3. Or Act 1, 2 boss, kind of. And yeah, they kind of are the tail end of Sonic 2. And I think that they are a fitting end to a game that lasts just a little bit too long for my liking. I've been dogging on Sonic 2 a lot this video, but I hope my passion for the game and my love for the game really has shown in my analysis, because there really is a lot of cool stuff to talk about here. And compare this to like the airship zones in Mario 3, I'll take Wing Fortress Zone anytime. And then especially Flying Battery even takes it to 11, right? Ups the ante to 11. So very cool level design in this game. I can't wait to talk about Sonic 3 and Sonic CD. I'll probably group those together into the same video. I might talk about the Sonic Mania levels, but I may not. It just kind of depends. I don't know that they really follow the same sort of philosophy. Totally different designers, and at that point, totally different just game philosophy in general. Maybe I'll go through all of the levels in Mania, probably in a separate video then, just because, while I don't know that I'll rank the levels of Mania the same way, just because it would be unfair to rank Mania's Chemical Plant against Sonic 2's Chemical Plant and all that. I do think that maybe we'll go through and do an analysis of the level design, kind of like we did lists for the Mania levels at some point. That sounds like it could be fun, especially because I've never really looked at Mania critically the way I've looked at the classic Sonic games. So that about does it for me today. Next time we'll go over the tier list for Sonic 2. You probably got a little bit of a sneak preview today of my opinions of some of these levels, but I was mostly judging design today, and theme is half of the ranking. So things like Hilltop will suffer when it comes to theme, because the music in Hilltop is just whatever, and it's reused assets. Whereas something like Casino Night, because its theme is so unique, at least to Sonic, even if it's been overdone now for Sonic since, for the time, it was one of the only levels that was really a unique theme to Sonic. It's going to get some bonus points in terms of theme, even though I hate its design. So rankings may not be so cut and dry, but that's kind of my analysis of the level design of the first two Sonic games. Hope you've had as much fun as I have looking at these levels, because man, as you can probably tell, I can talk about them all day. Cool stuff. So yeah, that's all for me tonight. It's getting so late now that my light is changing color. So that's gonna be it for me today. Check out the extended version of this video on neonrocks.com, and have a good night.